Chapter 1915. The 100-mile blood cloud was like a huge blood-red millstone entrenched in the void. At that moment, the figure exuded a monstrous aura and a ferocious aura. One could vaguely see the shadow of a giant beast shuttling back and forth in the blood cloud. It made the blood cloud look even more terrifying. The two guards from King Sage Hall had already spat out blood and died under the terrifying aura. Blood Shark Ancestor. The 8th Saint King's eyes widened and he exclaimed. His expression changed drastically, and he was both shocked and angry. Blood Shark Ancestor. The 3rd Sword Throne's face was also filled with shock. Chu Mu did not know who Blood Shark Ancestor was, but he could feel that the figure under the blood cloud contained a powerful force. He was definitely a second refinement expert. Moreover, this person was not from the human clan. From the words of the 8th Saint King and the 3rd Sword Throne, he knew that this person must be from the Sea Clan, a peerless expert of the Sea Clan. Blood Shark Ancestor, how dare you come to my King Sage Hall and behave so atrociously? The 8th Saint King was shocked and furious. He shouted loudly, his beard and hair fluttering in anger. So what? King Sage Hall, hand over the murderer who killed my descendant. Otherwise, I will destroy 10 of your human clan's islands and bury them with my descendant. Blood Shark Ancestor's attitude was unyielding. His words were filled with shocking murderous intent, and his killing intent was monstrous. The reason why he did not attack King Sage Hall was because he knew that King Sage Hall was a treasure that he could not shake. Even if he revealed his true form, he would not be able to damage King Sage Hall at all. It was better to conserve his strength. Compared to attacking the Sage King Hall, using the threat of destroying the islands was more effective. Every inhabited island had at least millions or even tens of millions of humans. 10 islands added together would have at least tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of humans. There was a possibility that some cultivation geniuses would be born among these islands. If they were destroyed, it would mean the disappearance of these cultivation geniuses in the future. This was only one of the reasons. Secondly, if the 10 islands were destroyed, it would be a serious blow to the reputation and fortune of the human tribe. Destiny was very vague, but it existed. Once the Blood Shark Ancestor massacred the 10 islands, the destiny of the human race would suffer a severe blow. It was very likely that in the future, the human race's overall strength would continue to weaken. As a result, the human race would be constantly suppressed by the sea race and the sea beast race until the human race was wiped out. Massacring an island was something that could only be done by a madman. However, the Blood Shark Patriarch was a madman. He might have many misgivings normally, but once he made up his mind, he would definitely do it. Even if the human Saint Kings managed to kill him in the end, it would be difficult to reverse the situation. The destiny of the human race would be damaged. Blood Shark Ancestor, are you crazy? The 8th Saint King was shocked and angry. Since when do you have a descendant? Since when did anyone from King Sage Hall kill your descendant? The murderer is standing right next to you. How dare you say that there is no murderer? Blood Shark Ancestor roared angrily. A terrifying aura surged, and the blood-red clouds rolled. The shadow within seemed to let out a shocking roar. Murderer? The 8th Saint King subconsciously looked at Chu Mu. The 3rd Sword Throne seemed to have thought of something. His face suddenly changed, and his pupils shrank rapidly. The Blood Jade Emperor King Shark is your bloodline descendant? Chu Mu took a step forward and asked in a neither fast nor slow manner. Blood Jade Emperor Shark. The 8th Saint King's face changed again. Of course, he was familiar with this name. Blood Jade Emperor Shark King was also a Saint King-level expert. It had been very famous in the past 10 or 20 years. It was arrogant and overbearing, and it was a mutant of the Sea Clan. It seemed to have the bloodline of the Sea Beast Clan. Therefore, it was very powerful. In its original form, it could fight against an advanced first refinement or even a peak first refinement. During this period of time, the Blood Jade Emperor, Wang Sha, had been a headache for the Saint Kings of the Sage King Hall. He was at the beginner level of the first refinement, yet he could defeat an ordinary expert at the advanced level of the first refinement and even fight against an expert at the peak of the first refinement. If he were to reach the second refinement one day, then the Sea tribe would have another top fighting force. To the human race, this was extremely bad news. Moreover, Blood Jade Emperor Shark King's talent was amazing. Its speed of improvement was very fast. It would probably take less than 100 years to reach second refinement. They did not expect Blood Jade Emperor Shark King to be killed. The person who killed it was a Saint King level expert from the human clan. Now, it was the 15th Saint King of King Sage Hall. In other words, the 15th Saint King's strength was at least at the peak first refinement. The 8th Saint King was worried and happy at the same time. 15th Saint King, stay here and don't go out. Blood Shark Ancestor is an intermediate second refinement expert, but he has the strength of a peak intermediate second refinement. Once he reveals his original form, he is comparable to an advanced second refinement expert. In King Sage Hall, there are only 3 people who can fight against him. The only one who can defeat him is the first Saint King, but he is unable to kill him. 8th Saint King quickly said to Chu Mu, however, the Saint King Palace is a treasure. Even if the Blood Shark Ancestor manifests his true body and attacks with all his strength, he won't be able to damage the Saint King Palace at all. Not long after, the other Saint Kings will come to the Saint King Palace. The first Saint King will also come. When that time comes, the Blood Shark Ancestor won't be able to get any benefit. This was a protective measure. Perhaps it was a little embarrassing, but it was better than losing one's life. In Sky Blue Sea region, regardless of whether it was the human clan, the Sea tribe, or the Sea Beast clan, the strongest person was at the peak second refinement. However, due to the difference in talent between the Sea tribe and the Sea Beast clan, the first Saint King was at the peak second refinement and was close to the peak second refinement. Overall, he was still slightly inferior to the strongest person of the Sea tribe and the Sea Beast clan. This was the difference between the clans. The 8th Saint King said this because he truly regarded Chu Mu as a member of King Sage Hall and wanted to protect him. Thank you for your kindness, 8th Saint King. However, Blood Jade Emperor King Shark was killed before I joined King Sage Hall, so I should bear the responsibility. Chu Mu continued. Furthermore, I also want to test how strong I am right now. 15th Saint King. The 8th Saint King was shocked when he heard this. Just as he was about to say something, he saw a figure flash in front of him. Chu Mu had already left King Sage Hall and appeared outside the protection of King Sage Hall, facing the Blood Shark Patriarch. The 8th Saint King quickly moved and appeared outside King Sage Hall, standing side by side with Chu Mu. They faced the Blood Shark Patriarch directly. As soon as they appeared outside King Sage Hall, the Blood Shark Patriarch's terrifying blood evil chi rushed out, causing the 8th Saint King's expression to change drastically. The 8th Saint King was only at the first refinement. Although he had reached the peak of first refinement, there was still a huge gap between him and the Blood Shark Patriarch, who was at the middle second refinement. He was no match for the 8th Saint King. Under the impact of the terrifying blood evil chi, the 8th Saint King's body swayed. The impact on his mind was very strong. It was as if he was in a sea of blood. His face was pale, and he was on the verge of collapse. Just as he felt that he was about to sink, a sword radiance split the sea of blood and descended from the sky. The terrifying blood evil chi was also crushed by this sword radiance. The 8th Saint King suddenly felt that the pressure was greatly reduced, and he subconsciously looked at Chu Mu. 8th Saint King, there will be a great battle soon. You'd better return to King Sage Hall first. Chu Mu's voice sounded in the 8th Saint King's ears. The 8th Saint King was shocked and doubtful, but he still did as he was told. I was wrong. The 15th Saint King is not a first refinement supreme, but a second refinement supreme. After the 8th Saint King returned to King Sage Hall, he smiled bitterly. Immediately, he became excited. With one more second refinement Saint King expert, the overall strength of King Sage Hall would increase. This was a good thing. Human Saint King, you will pay for what you have done. Blood Shark Ancestor furiously roared. The blood clouds within 100 miles churned and the seawater below also churned and roared. Huge waves soared into the sky as an astonishing baleful aura surged forth. It was like a storm wreaking havoc as it bombarded Chu Mu with the power to destroy everything. The terrifying aura was like a giant shark rushing out, opening its mouth and biting viciously. Sword light flashed in Chu Mu's eyes, and his aura condensed like a sword. He slashed at the void, directly splitting the evil chi that was rushing towards him into two. The evil chi rushed out from both sides, and it could not affect Chu Mu at all. This scene shocked the 8th Saint King even more, and the third Sword Throne's eyes shone brightly. They originally thought that they knew Chu Mu's strength, but they did not expect that Chu Mu's strength was even higher than they had imagined. Good, human Saint King, you have some strength. It will be more fun to kill you like this. The Blood Shark Patriarch was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed loudly. He was extremely angry in his heart. 100 years ago, he joined forces with the Sea King Beast of the Sea Beast clan to launch a sneak attack on 2 human Saint Kings and killed them. However, under the counterattack of the 2 human Saint Kings, the Sea King Beast was also injured and was killed by the Blood Shark Patriarch. After killing the Sea King Beast, the Blood Shark Patriarch extracted its blood essence and brought it back to the Blood Shark Island. He then extracted a bit of his own blood and used a secret method to cultivate it. He integrated a trace of the Sea King Beast's blood essence, and finally, with a 10% success rate, he successfully cultivated the Blood Jade Emperor Shark, a mutant of the Sea Beast clan and the Sea Beast. Because he cultivated it secretly and did not announce it, no one knew the relationship between him and the Blood Jade Emperor Shark. The Blood Shark Patriarch's purpose was to raise the Blood Jade Emperor Shark. He believed that with the deterrence of the Sea Beast clan and the Blood Jade Emperor Shark's amazing talent, it would definitely be able to grow. His purpose was to wait until the Blood Jade Emperor Shark reached the second refining, and then devour it to improve his own blood essence and even evolve to a higher level. At that time, his strength would be greatly improved, and he would most likely have the strength of the third refining, becoming the top expert in the Sky Blue Sea region. At that time, he would not have to worry about the experts of the Human Clan and the Sea Beast Clan. He would directly tear up the alliance, kill and eat all the experts of the 2 clans, and turn them into his own strength. He would become even more powerful, and the Sea Beast clan would dominate the Sky Blue Sea region. However, all of this ended when the Blood Jade Emperor Shark was killed by Chu Mu. All of his efforts were for naught. How could he not want to kill Chu Mu? Chapter 1916. Recalling the scene in his mind, Ancestor Blood Shark became even more furious. He was like a volcano that was constantly accumulating magma until it reached the limit and had no choice but to erupt. Under the horrifying killing intent, Ancestor Blood Shark reached out and grabbed the air. The blood clouds in the sky rotated, and a wisp was suddenly separated. It flowed into Ancestor Blood Shark's hand like a funnel. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a 2-meter-long spear. It was blood-red in color, and the spearhead was like a sword. It was covered with barbs, and a cold light flickered. At first glance, it was enough to send chills down one's spine. This spear was called the Beast Bone Blood Devourer Spear. It was refined from the bones of the Sea King Beast that Ancestor Blood Shark had killed 100 years ago. It was incomparably hard. Moreover, it had absorbed blood from the blood pool of Blood Shark Island for nearly 100 years. Its power was terrifying, and it had the effect of sucking blood. Once injured by the Beast Bone Blood Devourer Spear, blood would flow out, and part of it would be absorbed. Peerless experts could still survive after losing their blood, but they would fall into a weakened state. This was because if their blood was continuously absorbed, their condition would be affected, and they would not be able to fully display their strength. In the end, they would be killed. Die. With a roar, Ancestor Blood Shark's body moved like lightning. In an instant, he crossed thousands of meters. His strength merged with the beast Bone Blood Devourer's spear in his hand. He pierced through the void, and the blood-red light gathered at the tip of the spear. It was so dazzling that the 8 Saint Kings had no choice but to close their eyes. This spear broke through the void. It was merciless, and it wanted to pierce through Chu Mu. Although Ancestor Blood Shark was fast, Chu Mu had long been prepared. The beast Bone Blood Devourer's spear pierced through the void. Chu Mu waved his right hand, and the silver light spirit sword appeared in his hand. He slashed out a fine silver sword light, which tore through the void and attacked Ancestor Blood Shark. The Blood Shark Patriarch was a genuine second refinement expert. He had even reached the middle stage of the second refinement. Furthermore, due to his high-grade C-tribe bloodline, he possessed the strength of a peak middle stage of the second refinement. This was under the condition that he had not revealed his true body. Chu Mu's cultivation was actually only at the pinnacle of the 9-star saint level. However, his sword origin was very pure and powerful. The power of the pinnacle of the 9-star saint level was also very strong. The combination of the two was many times more powerful than an ordinary pinnacle of the 9-star saint level. Coupled with the other powers that Chu Mu had mastered, his unparalleled swordsmanship realm, and so on, created his strength that was comparable to a peerless expert. Before entering the solitary sword sect's myriad sword realm, Chu Mu's strength was almost at the pinnacle of the first refinement. If he used all his trump cards and displayed the powerful Great Heavenly Might sword style or the Heavenly Slaughter and Earthly Calamity sword style, he could reach the initial stage of the second refinement. After entering the myriad sword realm, Chu Mu's sword origin had been refined and condensed to the true pinnacle. This caused his strength to increase a little, surpassing the pinnacle of the first refinement and barely stepping into the second refinement. Then, it triggered the second effect of the myriad sword realm. It allowed the sword chi to enter his body and fuse with his Dantian and Divine Wilderness sword origin, greatly increasing the sharpness of the Divine Wilderness sword origin and increasing its power. Usually, 100 streaks of sword chi represented a level. In other words, it was twice as strong. Chu Mu could store 1,000 streaks of sword chi, causing the power of the Divine Wilderness sword origin to increase significantly. The sharpness was extremely shocking. It was as if Chu Mu had been using the Sword God's Descent secret technique, increasing the sharpness by 10 times. Under such a 10-fold increase, Chu Mu's strength went from barely stepping into the initial second refinement to the pinnacle of the initial second refinement, infinitely close to the intermediate second refinement. Such strength naturally couldn't be compared to the Blood Shark Patriarch. However, under the essence of Chu Mu's heart and sword as one, the trajectory of the Blood Shark Patriarch's attacks were all sensed by Chu Mu, allowing him to react better. With 2 swords in hand, Chu Mu's strength multiplied, truly reaching the intermediate second refinement. His strength had taken another step forward. When the 2 swords were unleashed, the completely different sword attacks made it difficult for the Blood Shark Patriarch to adapt. However, he had lived for a long time and had experienced hundreds of battles. His battle experience was incomparably rich, so he quickly adapted. In terms of absolute strength, the Blood Shark Patriarch was above Chu Mu. However, in terms of battle skills, Chu Mu was better than the Blood Shark Patriarch. For a moment, the Blood Shark Patriarch couldn't suppress Chu Mu. After all, under Chu Mu's sword skills, there wasn't much of a difference between the intermediate second refinement and the intermediate second refinement. He's so strong. He can actually fight the Blood Shark Patriarch to a draw. The 8th Saint King's face was full of shock. Although the Blood Shark Patriarch hadn't revealed his true body, his strength was still very shocking. There were only a few people in the Sage King Hall who could defeat him. Now there was one more. 8th Saint King, is that person the 15th Saint King who just joined our Sage King Hall? A gentle voice suddenly sounded in the 8th Saint King's ears. The 8th Saint King was shocked and quickly looked over. Oh, it's the 2nd Saint King. That's right. He's the 15th Saint King who just joined our Sage King Hall, the 8th Saint King quickly said. In the Sage King Hall, the ranking wasn't based on strength. It was based on the order of entering the Sage King Hall. However, the 1st Saint King was undoubtedly the strongest in the Sage King Hall. The 2nd Saint King was the 2nd strongest, and the 3rd Saint King was the 3rd strongest. The 4th Saint King's strength was not as strong as the 5th Saint King's. The 2nd Saint King's strength was close to the peak of the advanced 2nd refinement. Although they were all Saint Kings, there were differences in strength between the 1st refinement and the 2nd refinement. Therefore, the 8th Saint King was respectful when facing the 2nd Saint King. This was a form of respect for the strong. You can actually contend with the Blood Shark Patriarch in his human form. 8th Saint King, you've done a great job this time. The 2nd Saint King nodded and said, however, in terms of absolute strength, the 15th Saint King is still inferior to the Blood Shark Patriarch. However, their swordsmanship is incomparably exquisite. I'm afraid it's not inferior to the 1st Saint King's. The 8th Saint King's heart trembled when he heard this. The 1st Saint King was a peerless expert at the peak of the 2nd refinement. He was an extremely powerful swordsman. The 15th Saint King's swordsmanship was actually comparable to the 1st Saint King's. This was too shocking. In fact, the 2nd Saint King's words weren't accurate enough. Because he wasn't a swordsman, he didn't seem to have a deep understanding of it. He only felt that it was very profound. He had only seen it from the 1st Saint King. If the 1st Saint King had seen it here, he wouldn't have thought so. The battle between Chu Mu and the Blood Shark Patriarch became more and more intense. The terrifying sword light wreaked havoc in all directions, and the shocking blood-colored spear light shattered the void. With such power, even the 1st refinement expert would be in danger of being killed if he got close. The 8th Saint King felt his scalp tingle. The Blood Shark Patriarch was different. Even with his strength, he couldn't kill his opponent. He couldn't even suppress him. This made him extremely angry. After this battle, Chu Mu had once again integrated his strength and reached a perfect state. Blood prison burning heaven. Suddenly, 30% of his blood essence burned. The blood-colored flames around Chu Mu's body burned fiercely. His disappointment also increased by 7 or 8 times in an instant. He had barely entered the middle 2nd refinement, but now he had reached the peak of the middle 2nd refinement. He was even stronger than the Blood Shark Patriarch. With the increase in absolute strength and unparalleled swordsmanship, Chu Mu immediately suppressed the Blood Shark Patriarch. The Blood Shark Patriarch was shocked when he used the Heaven and Earth Cross slash. You're courting death. The Blood Shark Patriarch roared. A terrifying aura suddenly exploded from his body, forcibly shattering Chu Mu's Heaven and Earth Cross slash. Immediately, a blood-colored light spread out. The 100-mile blood cloud in the sky spun rapidly, turning into a giant funnel. It fell and poured into the blood-colored light, causing it to expand. The giant shadow in the blood cloud also entered the blood-colored light after a roar. The power was so strong that Chu Mu couldn't even get close. He could only wait for the transformation to end. Divine Wilderness Return. Chu Mu understood that this was the Blood Shark Patriarch revealing his true body. During the process, he would be protected. Unless Chu Mu had the strength of the 3rd refinement, he wouldn't be able to break through. Since that was the case, Chu Mu could also use this time to use a secret technique to increase his strength. Ripples immediately spread out from Chu Mu's feet. Layer by layer, they spread out to tens of thousands of meters away. Immediately, all the Yuan Qi in the area was attracted by Chu Mu. They turned into ripples and returned to him. The Yuan Qi in the sky blue sea region was quite abundant. It was beneficial for Chu Mu to use the Divine Wilderness Return secret technique. Now, with Chu Mu's strength, it wouldn't take long for him to use the Divine Wilderness Return secret technique. 3 breaths was enough. His aura rose steadily, becoming stronger and stronger. Chu Mu immediately felt his body expand. The feeling of a powerful force pouring into his body was very obvious. 10 times. The overall power of the Divine Wilderness Sword essence had increased by 10 times under the Divine Wilderness Return secret technique. His strength, which was originally at the peak of the middle second refinement, had increased again to the advanced second refinement. Moreover, it was close to the peak of the advanced second refinement. There is actually a second secret technique. Second Saint King and Eighth Saint King were shocked. There were actually many secret techniques that they grasped. However, from the beginning until now, there was only one that was suitable for them. Yet, Chu Mu had used 2 of them. Such a secret technique would be of great use to them. At the same time, Blood Shark Ancestor's transformation was completed. The bloody light shrunk and was absorbed by his body. A body that was 150 feet tall appeared in front of Chu Mu. This was a huge shark. It was blood-red and looked extremely ferocious. It was 70% similar to the Blood Jade Emperor shark that Chu Mu had killed. However, it was bigger and its aura was more tyrannical. Its strength was even more shocking. Human race Saint King, your time of death has come. Blood Shark Ancestor roared. After revealing his true form, his voice became even more terrifying. Every roar was enough to shatter the primordial spirit of all experts below the Saint King level. Even a peerless first refinement expert would find it difficult to resist. However, the sound waves were blocked by the Saint King Hall. It's not certain who will die, Chu Mu said. A powerful force flowed through his body, giving him great confidence. Chapter 1917. The huge tail swung violently, whipping the void. The violent whistling sound was like thousands of horses galloping. A terrifying pressure descended from the sky, directly bombarding Chu Mu. 150 feet tall, and Chu Mu was still quite a distance away from 10 feet tall. The difference in size between the two was huge. It was like a kitten standing in front of an elephant. The huge tail swung down. The difference in size and the shocking power made the 8 Saint Kings and the Third Sword Throne's expressions change drastically. They suspected that Chu Mu would explode under that blow. The tail swung down, bringing with it a roaring hurricane. Chu Mu's body swayed like a piece of paper, moving with the wind, calmly avoiding the Blood Shark Ancestor's tail. That's right, after the Blood Shark Ancestor revealed his true form, his strength had reached the advanced second refining level. Moreover, he was at the peak of the advanced second refining level. Such strength was very terrifying. In the entire Sage King Hall, only the top 3 Saint Kings could fight him. Even the 3rd Saint King could barely put up a fight. However, although the Blood Shark Ancestor was much stronger, due to the increase in size, its agility was slightly inferior. In other words, the Blood Shark Ancestor's agility wasn't affected. However, due to the increase in size, it was easier for Chu Mu to seize the gap. Dodge sword. The dazzling sword light slashed directly on the Blood Shark Ancestor's body. The Blood Shark Ancestor revealed his true form, which was 150 feet tall, undoubtedly became a much bigger target. It was also more difficult for him to dodge Chu Mu's sword. However, the sword light shattered, and the Blood Shark Ancestor did not suffer any damage. His incomparably tough skin gave him an amazing defensive power, firmly protecting his body. What an amazing defense! Chu Mu could not help but think to himself. This defense was many times stronger than the Blood Jade Emperor shark that he had killed earlier. After missing his attack, the Blood Shark Ancestor turned around and bit fiercely. A fishy wind blew, making Chu Mu feel dizzy. He quickly stopped breathing. After using the heaven-burning blood prison and seizing the opportunity to use the divine wilderness restoration, his strength had increased to the advanced second refining level. However, there was still a gap in front of the blood shark ancestor in his true form. After revealing his true form, the blood shark ancestor's attack methods were fewer. It was nothing more than biting, charging, slapping, and so on. However, no matter which one it was very proficient in each and had astonishing power. After all, it was an instinct of the blood shark ancestor, an instinct that he had been constantly tempering since his birth. The continuous and ferocious attacks and the spinning body unleashed an astonishing power that bombarded Chu Mu unceasingly. Countless streams of baleful blood energy tore through the sky. Each stream seemed to transform into a long spear that tore through the void. That was the power of the beast bone blood-devouring spear. The blood-devouring spear was refined by the blood shark ancestor and was connected to his mind. Even if he was in his true form and not holding it with both hands, he could still use his will and strength to activate the power contained in the spear and combine it with his own strength to launch an attack. Chu Mu held his two swords. Sword light crisscrossed and swept in all directions, shattering the blood-colored spear light. He dodged the blood shark ancestor's attacks and looked for an opportunity to counterattack. Blood shark devour. Seizing the opportunity, the blood shark ancestor used his ultimate move. The blood-colored light on his body spread out and instantly gathered, turning into 100 zhang-long blood-colored shark. It carried a monstrous blood aura. With an incomparably tyrannical power, it charged at Chu Mu, shaking the void. This attack had reached the peak of the advanced second refining level. Moreover, it contained a terrifying qi. Once hit, even if one could block it, it would not feel good. Chu Mu could clearly feel the terrifying power contained in the 100 zhang-long blood-colored shark. Naturally, he would not take it head-on. Under the impact of the attack, the figure directly shattered. That was only an afterimage. His real body appeared beside the blood shark ancestor. Heaven and earth cross-slash. The dazzling sword light tore through the void and slashed at the blood shark ancestor. Even though the blood shark ancestor's defense was shocking, the power of Chu Mu's sword light was extremely strong. Unable to dodge, the heaven and earth cross sword light slashed at the blood shark ancestor's skin. It tore through his tough skin and cut into his flesh, causing damage. Even though it was only a light injury, the blood shark ancestor could feel the pain. Most importantly, he had been injured by a weak human who was weaker than him even though he had revealed his true form. This was an utter humiliation. Shark devour. In his rage, the blood shark ancestor used an even stronger ultimate move. The blood-colored light expanded. It was at least 10 times stronger than the blood shark devour from before. It was extremely dazzling, like a small sun. A terrifying aura burst out. Soon after, countless frightening roars rang out. Soon after, 100-meter-long wild shark after another appeared. There were a total of a few dozen, and they all charged towards Chu Mu. Shark devour! Every one of the 100 zhang frenzied sharks had the strength of a peak second refinement. Tens of them were countless times stronger than the charge of an army with thousands of men and horses. Shark swarm bite was 100 times more terrifying than blood shark bite. Looking at the dozens of peak advanced second refinement sharks charging at him as if they had gone mad, Chu Mu's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. This feeling was like an ordinary person falling into the sea and being chased by dozens of sharks. Imagine, that ordinary person would be so scared that his limbs would go limp. He might even faint and become the shark's food. These 100 zhang-long sharks were not ordinary sharks. Chu Mu was not an ordinary person either. He had powerful strength and an incomparably firm will. Therefore, even though he was shocked, he did not feel fear. The dozens of 100 zhang-long sharks charged at him, stirring up the yuan qi of heaven and earth, and causing it to become extremely chaotic. Everything in the surroundings was violently affected. Vaguely, the power of the dozens of 100 zhang-long sharks seemed to connect as one, faintly sealing the surroundings. Unless one's strength was clearly above the peak of advanced second refinement, it would be impossible to escape. Chu-Mu felt an extremely strong binding force. It was as if he was trapped in a small world. The dozens of 100-zhang-long sharks charged at him again and again. Dodging, dodging, he pushed the power of the attack to the extreme. It felt like a small boat in a stormy sea, battered by countless waves and about to be smashed to pieces at any time. Cutting Dao, piercing through the clouds. After dodging, Chu-Mu seized the fleeting opportunity and quickly drew his sword. In an instant, he struck 10 times. The speed of his sword was unbelievably fast, tearing a hole in the combined power of the dozens of 100-zhang-long sharks. His figure flashed and immediately passed through the gap, escaping the siege of the sharks. This scene shocked the Blood Shark Patriarch. Usually, when facing opponents of similar strength, the Blood Shark Patriarch would use this move. Once the opponent was surrounded, they would be besieged to death. Even if they did not die, they would exhaust all their strength and be killed by the Blood Shark Patriarch. This was the first opponent to break out of the siege of the Blood Shark Patriarch, and it was a human. The 8th Saint King breathed a sigh of relief. He had heard of the power of the Blood Shark Patriarch. It was extremely terrifying. The 2nd Saint King also knew that if it were him, he would not be able to escape from the siege of the Blood Shark Patriarch without paying a certain price. Blood Sea Overflowing Sky. Even though the Blood Shark Patriarch had failed, the Blood Shark Patriarch did not stop. He used another ultimate move, Blood Sea Overflowing Sky, and the seawater below suddenly surged up and turned scarlet. Wave after wave surged, and each wave contained a terrifying power. On the waves, the figure of 100-zhang-long shark appeared. It rushed toward Chu-Mu as if it was riding the wind and breaking the waves. Its power vaguely surpassed the advanced stage of the second refining, and there was a possibility that it could reach the peak of the second refining. These waves seemed to be endless and continuous. Perhaps one could resist 1, 2, or even 3 waves, but one would not be able to resist more attack. In the end, one would definitely be crushed. Chu-Mu had seen this move before. The Blood Jade Emperor, King Shark, had used it before. However, the Blood Sea Overflowing Sky that the Blood Shark Patriarch used was more than 100 times more powerful than the Blood Jade Emperor's. If it were the previous Chu-Mu, he would definitely not be able to resist it. One attack would shatter his divine body, and he would die. However, the current Chu-Mu was not someone the previous Chu-Mu could compare to. Sword Domain Change. Sword God Descends. Immediately, Chu-Mu's strength surpassed the advanced second refinement, reaching the peak of the advanced second refinement. Heaven and Earth Cross Slash. An incomparably resplendent cross sword light pierced through the air. This was the peak of the second refinement. Under the dazzling cross-shaped sword light, the first wave that came crashing down was directly split apart, and even the mad shark phantom above it shattered and disappeared. The cross-sword light shattered 3 waves in a row and cancelled out the 4th wave. The Blood Sea Overflowing Sky was formed by the Blood Shark Patriarch's cultivation. It could be maintained for as long as it was strong. The 5th wave came crashing down, but it was still some distance away from Chu-Mu. Chu-Mu immediately raised his sword high. Thunderclouds gathered in the sky, and under the thundercloud vortex, a stunning bolt of lightning struck down from the sky, striking directly at Chu-Mu's raised sword. In an instant, Chu-Mu's figure stood between the heavens and the earth, towering under the lightning as if an ancient god had descended. "It's that sword!" The third sword throne was extremely excited, his whole body trembling. "Great heaven's might! Sword style!" A low roar sounded, but it was like rolling thunder, its momentum roaring. The sword slashed down. The astonishing sword light, with the majesty of the heavens and the might of the heavenly Tao's judgment, tore through the sky, shattering the void, and slashed toward the Blood Shark Patriarch. This sword illuminated the heavens and the earth, piercing through the ages. The 2nd Saint King, the 8th Saint King, and the other Saint Kings who had just arrived widened their eyes in awe. The Blood Shark Patriarch was dumbfounded. The power of that sword was too strong, completely beyond the range of what he could withstand. Wave after wave was split apart, and the giant shark phantom above it was shattered, unable to block it. Without hesitation, the Blood Shark Patriarch opened his mouth, and a ball of bloody light shot out. It was the Beast Bone Blood Devourer spear. He quickly turned around and rushed down. As long as he entered the sea, he could quickly escape. With a roar like a bloody sun hanging in the sky, the Beast Bone Blood Devourer spear was shattered by the sword light. Chapter 1918. The Beast Bone Blood Devouring spear was something that the Blood Shark ancestor had spent 100 years cultivating. It was connected to his bloodline and could unleash its full power. At this moment, the Beast Bone Blood Devouring spear, in order to block Chu Mu's incomparably tyrannical sword, exploded with its greatest power. In the instant of collision, the great heavenly might sword light was thus shattered, but all of the power within fell onto the Beast Bone Blood Devouring spear. The sliver of pseudo-heavenly way power within the great heavenly might invaded the Beast Bone Blood Devouring spear and wreaked havoc inside. The Beast Bone Blood Devouring spear was closely connected to the Blood Shark ancestor, so the sliver of pseudo-heavenly way power had damaged the Blood Shark ancestor's mind to a certain extent. The Blood Shark ancestor, who had plunged into the sea, suddenly trembled. He spat out a mouthful of blood from his huge mouth, and his aura weakened significantly. Damn it! The Blood Shark ancestor was furious. He could feel that his connection with the Beast Bone Blood Devouring spear had been completely severed. The mouthful of blood from a shark that was 150 feet long was incomparably huge for a human. It instantly dyed the sea below red, covering at least 10,000 meters and spreading rapidly. With a splash, the Blood Shark ancestor's huge body had already plunged into the sea, turning into a black shadow that rapidly shrank and disappeared. All of this happened in an instant. The Saint Kings of the Sage King Hall could not react in time. They could only watch as the Blood Shark ancestor plunged into the sea. If they had reacted quickly enough, they would have been able to intercept the Blood Shark ancestor in advance. If they worked together, they might have been able to kill him. Even if they could not kill him, they would have been able to injure him sufficiently to prevent him from appearing for a long time. His threat would be greatly reduced. Unfortunately, they had missed the opportunity. The Blood Shark ancestor's speed would be greatly increased when he plunged into the sea. Moreover, the sea was equivalent to his home ground. It was extremely disadvantageous to fight him in the sea. Moreover, catching up to him was still a problem. Chu Mu reached out and grabbed the Beast Bone Blood Devouring spear. He stored it in his space ring. Then, he turned into a sword light and plunged straight down. In the blink of an eye, he plunged into the sea. It was small, fast, and as sharp as a sword. In an instant, it dove into the sea without causing any splashes. 15 Saint Kings. The 8 Saint Kings were instantly shocked. The sea was the Blood Shark Patriarch's home ground. If the 15 Saint Kings continued to pursue him, it would be disadvantageous for him. However, it was too late to stop him. I'll go. The 3rd Saint King appeared to be a very cold person, but as soon as he finished speaking, his body had already appeared outside the Saint King Hall and rapidly fell into the sea. Blood Prison burning the heavens increased his strength by 8 times. Divine Wilderness returning to origin increased his strength by 10 times. Sword Domain Transformation increased the might of his dual swords by 5 times. Sword God Descends increased his sharpness by 10 times. Chu Mu's strength instantly increased by many times. Chu Mu's strength could be considered to be at the peak of the early second refining. With the double increase in the strength of his dual swords, he barely reached the middle second refining. With the support of various secret techniques, he had reached the peak of the advanced second refining. In terms of absolute strength, he was not inferior to the Blood Shark Patriarch. As for Chu Mu's swordsmanship, it was even more shocking. Not only could he fully unleash his strength, but he could also surpass his limits and reach a higher level. It was this that gave Chu Mu the confidence to pursue the Blood Shark Patriarch. His motive for pursuing the Blood Shark Patriarch was obvious. He had his eyes on the Blood Shark Patriarch's skin. Originally, after killing the Blood Jade Emperor Shark, he had refined its blood essence into a blood essence pill, but left the corpse and skin behind. His motive was to take a fancy to the toughness of the Blood Jade Emperor Shark's skin and its amazing defensive power. However, he was now even stronger. The skin of the Blood Jade Emperor Shark was only at the first refining, so it was not of much use to Chu Mu. However, the Blood Shark Patriarch was a second refining expert. The defensive power of his skin was amazing. It could withstand the attack of a peak middle second refining. Even an attack of an advanced second refining would not be able to damage it. Therefore, if he killed the Blood Shark Patriarch, peeled off his skin, and asked someone to refine it into a treasure robe, its defensive power might be even stronger. At that time, it might be able to withstand the attack of a peak advanced second refining or even a peak second refining, greatly increasing his survivability. If the Blood Shark Patriarch knew that this was the reason why Chu Mu was pursuing him, he would probably be scared to death. Peeling off his skin. Just the thought of it was terrifying. Entering the sea, the speed of the Blood Shark Patriarch had indeed increased by quite a bit. However, Chu Mu's speed was not slow either. The resistance of the sea was indeed strong. However, Chu Mu's body was small. Furthermore, he used the Flying Heavens sword kinesis technique. With the sharpness of his sword, he sliced through the sea, reducing the resistance to the lowest possible level. By the time the three Saint Kings entered the sea, Chu Mu had already chased after the Blood Shark Patriarch, pulling a long distance away from him. However, the three Saint Kings gave chase as well. However, their speed could not compare to that of the Blood Shark Patriarch and Chu Mu. Damned human! To think that you would dare to chase after me! The sea shall be your death ground! The Blood Shark Patriarch was enraged. To think that this human would not let him off even now. He was still chasing after him, trying to kill him. One must know that the sea was his home ground. In his rage, the Blood Shark Patriarch came to a halt. Swinging his tail, he brought with him an undercurrent that bolted out at Chu Mu silently. In the depths of the sea, the power of the undercurrent was frighteningly strong. However, Chu Mu's senses were extremely sharp. The moment the undercurrent appeared, he had already reacted and dodged swiftly. Like a piece of duckweed, Chu Mu borrowed the power of the undercurrent. After dodging it, his speed did not decrease at all. Instead, he sped up and closed in on the Blood Shark Patriarch. The Blood Shark Patriarch was startled. Opening his mouth, he spat out a shocking amount of power. Bringing with it the undercurrent, it formed a blood-red vortex that slammed out at Chu Mu. The terrifying suction force sucked in the surrounding undercurrent, causing it to grow even stronger. Chu Mu could only feel his body being bound by the power of the blood-red vortex. He could no longer dodge as nimbly as before. Since that was the case, there was no point in dodging. His eyes flashed with a sharp glint. Man and sword as one, Chu Mu bolted out at the vortex. Courting death. The Blood Shark Patriarch roared with laughter. In the depths of the sea, his advantage was even more obvious. Every single move of his could bring forth a tremendous amount of power. The power of that blood-red vortex was not any weaker than the Blood Shark Devour. Yet, Chu Mu had taken the initiative to meet it. If that wasn't courting death, what was? As long as he was injured, death would follow. The laughter of a gigantic shark was rather comical, especially in the depths of the sea. However, the laughter of the Blood Shark Patriarch froze. A figure pierced through the center of the blood-red vortex. That sword light was incomparably sharp as it slashed out at him. By the time the Blood Shark Patriarch could react, Chu Mu had already arrived. The incomparably sharp sword light slashed out at the Blood Shark Patriarch. Two consecutive high-level swords tore at the skin of the Blood Shark Patriarch, but they did not cause any obvious damage. My mental state is injured, and my strength has dropped significantly. If we were in the sea, I wouldn't be a match for this human. But in the sea, I have the advantage. The blood shark patriarch's thoughts shifted as he understood where his advantage lay. Immediately, the blood shark patriarch decided to give it his all. Even if he had to suffer some injuries, he had to kill this human. Otherwise, there would be another powerful second cultivated Saint King in the human king's sage palace. That would be bad news for the sea tribe. His gigantic body tumbled, bringing with it countless undercurrents. The blood shark patriarch opened his mouth once more, and an incomparably terrifying power gushed out from within. Blood shark sea devour. A blood-red vortex appeared in the depths of the blood shark patriarch's mouth. The terrifying suction force seemed as though it was going to devour the entire sea. Chu Mu's body was first swept up by the countless undercurrents. Then, he was swept up by the power of the blood shark sea devour. It was hard for him to escape. The defense of the blood shark patriarch is extremely frightening. In the sea, my strength is affected as well. If I want to kill him, it'll be extremely difficult. Since that's the case, I might as well destroy his body from within and kill him. Chu Mu thought to himself. Without a doubt, this was an extremely risky move. But if there was a chance, he would definitely be able to kill the blood shark patriarch. Chu Mu had never been one to hesitate. After analyzing the pros and cons, he made a decision. He gave up resisting and allowed the blood shark sea devourer to devour him. He then used all of his strength to cover his entire body, forming the strongest layer of defense for himself. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu was swallowed into the stomach of the blood shark patriarch. The blood shark patriarch closed his mouth and swung his tail, swimming in the direction of the blood shark island. After swimming for about a dozen li, the blood shark patriarch's body suddenly trembled and rolled, stirring up the seabed. Dust billowed and dyed the seawater a turbid color. He could only feel waves of intense pain coming from within his body, as if someone was using a sharp weapon to cut at his insides. That was the truth. Chu Mu was swallowed inside. It was extremely dangerous, but he still managed to hold on. He launched a counterattack, his two swords unceasingly cutting. The blood shark patriarch's internal defense was not as good as the skin on his body. It was completely unable to resist Chu Mu's two swords. The pain made him roll continuously, but there was nothing he could do. The internal defense was the weakest part. Chu Mu did not waste any time. After causing enough damage to the blood shark patriarch, he immediately used the blood-refining evil skill to absorb the blood shark patriarch's essence and refined it into a blood essence pill. Incomparably shrill screams shook the surroundings, as if he was enduring inhumane torture. The sea beasts and sea tribes in a certain range were all frightened and did not dare to approach. After a while, the screams stopped, and the rolling also quieted down. From the turbid waters, a sword light flashed. It instantly tore through and rushed out. It was Chu Mu. He had taken a risk and attacked from the inside, finally killing the blood shark patriarch. He had also removed a huge threat for the human race of the Sky Blue Sea region. Chapter 1919. At the bottom of the sea, Chu Mu and the third Saint King met. 15th Saint King, I heard the blood shark ancestors scream. Could it be that the blood shark ancestor has already? The third Saint King's numb face revealed traces of shock and speculation. The blood shark ancestor is already dead. Chu Mu nodded and said, May I know which Saint King you are? The third Saint King knew that Chu Mu was the 15th Saint King, but Chu Mu did not know which Saint King he was, so he asked. Third. The third Saint King's answer was very simple, but his heart was still in shock. Even if he used all his strength, he could barely fight against the blood shark ancestor. Even the first Saint King would find it difficult to kill him. Excited, the third Saint King and Chu Mu quickly rushed out of the sea and flew in the direction of the Saint King Hall. The third Saint King was a man of few words, so he did not say anything along the way. He only glanced at Chu Mu from time to time, his heart still in shock. At this time, Chu Mu had already stopped using all kinds of secret techniques, and his strength had returned to its normal level, the peak of the beginner second refining. Not long after, Chu Mu and the third Saint King returned to the Saint King Hall. "Great 15th Saint King, you came back safe and sound." The 8th Saint King walked over to take a look and said happily, "The Blood Shark ancestor is from the Sea Clan, and the sea is his home ground. He can unleash his strength to the extreme and has the advantage. It is very disadvantageous for us humans to fight in the sea, but it is good that you came back alive. At least the Blood Shark ancestor will be more restrained in the future." The 8th Saint King thought that Chu Mu did not catch up to the Blood Shark ancestor, and the other Saint Kings thought so too. After all, in the sea, even the first Saint King would find it difficult to defeat the Blood Shark ancestor. "The Blood Shark ancestor is dead," the third Saint King suddenly said, and then added, "He was killed by the 15th Saint King." The third Saint King's expression was somewhat stupefied, and his tone of voice was also dry. It sounded very methodical, and talking to him would not make anyone feel comfortable. However, no one cared about this at this moment, because the content of the third Saint King's words was like a bolt of lightning that struck them. It shocked them so much that they could not react for a moment. "Three Saint Kings, did you see it with your own eyes?" one of the Saint Kings asked in disbelief. "No," the third Holy King replied woodenly. "But I heard Patriarch Bloodshark's miserable cry. I only heard screams. Maybe he was injured and didn't die." There were still people who didn't believe it. After all, it was too difficult. "The 15th Saint King is here. Just ask him and you'll know," the second Saint King said. "Dead," Chu Mu said. "He's really dead?" The other Saint Kings all widened their eyes. "He's dead. His corpse is in my interspatial ring," Chu Mu said. With a wave of his hand, the Blood Shark ancestor's huge body appeared in front of everyone. However, it was somewhat shriveled, as if all the blood in his body had flowed out. After letting everyone take a look, Chu Mu put away the Blood Shark ancestor's corpse. "He's really dead. The Blood Shark ancestor is actually dead," the group of Saint Kings muttered to themselves, still in disbelief. However, the truth was the truth. Moreover, they all recognized the Blood Shark ancestor's corpse. Its appearance and aura could not be faked. Soon, the Saint Kings accepted this conclusion and felt happy from the bottom of their hearts. 15th Saint King, you've made a great contribution to the human clan, the 5th Saint King said with incomparable surprise. That's right. The Blood Shark ancestor was one of the top 3 Saint Kings of the Sea Tribe. He was very powerful and difficult to deal with. Now that he's dead, the Sea Tribe's top combat power has been weakened, which is beneficial to the human clan. 100 years ago, the 11th Saint King and the 15th Saint King of our Sage King Hall were ambushed and killed. It was most likely the work of the Blood Shark ancestor. Now that the Blood Shark ancestor is dead, the 15th Saint King has avenged our Sage King Hall, the 8th Saint King said. In short, Chu Mu had become a great contributor to the Sage King Hall and was highly respected. Perhaps within the human clan there would be internal strife. However, when it came to foreign clans there was a clear sense of right and wrong. First, the Blood Jade Emperor Wang Shark had died. Now, the Blood Shark ancestor was dead. 2 of the top combat power of the Sea Tribe had been lost. It was obvious that the human clan was affected. The Sage King Hall held a simple celebration banquet for Chu Mu. Although it was called a celebration banquet, it was actually a welcoming banquet for Chu Mu. At the banquet, other than the first Saint King, all the other Saint Kings were present. It was a very enjoyable banquet. Chu Mu also learned that the second Saint King, in addition to being powerful, had another ability, which was to refine treasured armor. Chu Mu planned to refine the skins of the Blood Jade Emperor, Wang Shark, and the Blood Shark ancestor into treasured armor. However, He did not know how to do it, and he did not know who knew how to do it. Since the second Saint King knew how to do it, Chu Mu took the opportunity to mention it. The second Saint King readily agreed. These 2 large skins can be used to refine many treasured armors. However, it will take at least 2 years to refine all of them, the second Saint King said. 2 years. Chu Mu did a little calculation. The agreement with Kong Lu was 3 years. Now, a few months had passed. It was less than half a year. If it was a year and a half, he would have more than half a year left. By then, he would have enough time to obtain the essence of the earth and cultivate the second level of the Sword God's Descent secret technique before meeting up with Kong Lu and the others. Since that was the case, he would stay and use these 2 years in the Sage King Hall to consolidate his cultivation and improve his strength as much as possible. The third Sword Throne left the Sage King Hall. He was not a Saint King, and this was not a place where he could stay for long. Moreover, he had to hurry back as soon as possible to refine his precepts and become a peerless expert. Then, he would be a Saint King and could enter the Sage King Hall freely. The Saint King Palace's area was very large. There were only a dozen or so Saint Kings, so Chu Mu naturally took a small palace. There was plenty of heaven and earth energy. However, whether it was his cultivation or his saint body cultivation, they were both at the peak. There was no way to raise them any further. Therefore, whether the chi of heaven and earth was abundant or not did not matter much to Chu Mu at the moment. However, although he could not improve his cultivation of origin power and cultivation of divine body, he could improve his strength in other aspects, such as perfecting his swordsmanship, his attainments in swordsmanship, his realm of swordsmanship, the sword realm change, and so on. Now, his sword realm change could increase the power of his sword by 5 times, and there was still room for improvement. It was like an amazing secret technique. It could also be said that the sword realm change was a secret technique. Time flew. Whether it was the Sea Tribe or the Sea Beast clan, they all knew that a terrifying Saint King sword cultivator had appeared in the human clan. The Blood Jade Emperor Shark and the Blood Shark Ancestor had both died under his sword. This created the reputation of the 15 Saint Kings of the Sage King Hall. No, to the Sea Tribe and the Sea Beast clan, it was a fierce reputation. After all, it was the 2 experts of the Sea Tribe who had created the reputation of the 15 Saint Kings. Compared to the fear of the sea beasts, the oceanic race was shocked and furious. However, the Blood Shark Ancestor was one of the top 3 experts of the Sea Tribe. Even the top expert would find it difficult to kill the Blood Shark Ancestor. At most, he could defeat him. Moreover, the news from the Sage King Hall was that the Blood Shark Ancestor had been killed by the 15 Saint Kings of the human clan in the sea. Because of this, the top expert of the Sea Tribe did not challenge Chu Mu because he was not confident. Otherwise, with the ferocity and overbearingness of the Sea Tribe, he would have lost his patience. As for joining forces to kill Chu Mu, it would be difficult. After all, Chu Mu was now in the Sage King Hall. They did not have the ability to break into the Sage King Hall. Moreover, the 2 experts of the Sea Tribe had died, and one of them was a top expert. If they were to fight against the human clan, they would not have the advantage. However, the Sea Tribe was always paying attention to the movements of the Sage King Hall. As for the human clan, when the news spread, they were very excited and very excited. Their fate had also improved. Some of the human clan's geniuses had become more outstanding than in previous years. For the human clan, this was great news. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed. In these 2 years, Chu Mu had been cultivating in seclusion in the small hall. He had only just come out. Compared to 2 years ago, his aura had become even more obscure. Not long after, Second Saint King also came out of seclusion. Unlike Chu Mu, Second Saint King's aura was a bit weak. Moreover, he looked very tired and listless. 15 Saint Kings, fortunately, I did not disappoint you. I have refined the 2 skins into treasured clothes and armor, the second Saint King said with a smile. Thank you, second Saint King. Chumu was very grateful. He could see that the second Saint King had been working hard for the past 2 years, and had not had much rest. The second Saint King waved his hand, and blood-red treasured clothes and armor suddenly appeared in front of Chumu. Chumu's eyes widened. He was very shocked. There were a total of 20 treasured clothes and armor made from the skin of the blood jade Emperor Shark King. The treasured clothes were long robes that covered the whole body. There was also a hat. The treasured armor was a close-fitting inner armor that used relatively less materials. As for the treasured clothes and armor made from the skin of the blood shark ancestor, there were 10 of each. In fact, with such a large skin, it was theoretically possible to refine more treasured clothes and armor. However, due to various reasons such as the process of refining, the final product was naturally not as many as the theory. The fact that the second Saint King was able to refine these treasured clothes and armor was enough to show his amazing skills. Although the skin of the blood shark ancestor was larger, it was more difficult to refine the treasured clothes and armor that could withstand second refining attack. Thus, there were fewer finished products. This kind of treasured clothes and armor can withstand an attack at the peak of advanced first refining. It can offset 70% of an attack at the peak of first refining. The second Saint King said, "This kind is much more powerful. It can withstand an attack at the peak of advanced second refining. It can offset 70% of an attack at the peak of second refining." Second Saint King, please name them, Chumu said. This was a special honor for the refiner. These will be called the blood jade robe and blood jade armor. These will be called the blood shark robe and blood shark armor. The second Saint King did not stand on ceremony. Chumu waved his hand and put away the 15 blood jade robe and blood jade armor. He put away the 5 blood jade robe and blood jade armor. Second Saint King, please pass the remaining 5 blood jade robe and blood jade armor to the 5 sword thrones of the solitary sword sect on my behalf, Chumu said. As for the 5 blood shark robe and blood shark armor, leave them to the Sage King Hall. Chapter 1920. The sea area of the deep blue world was much larger than the land area. The sky above the sky blue ocean was clear and cloudless. From afar, a blood-red sword light streaked across the sky. It was moving forward at lightning speed. Below it was deep and calm like a gigantic sapphire. The blood-red sword light was Chumu. He was wearing the blood shark armor and blood shark robe. These were treasured armors that had been personally refined by second Saint King. They were made from the skin of the blood shark patriarch and mixed with other materials. They could completely withstand the attack of a peak second refinement expert and offset 70% of the attack power of a peak second refinement expert. Simply put, with the blood shark robe and blood shark armor, even a peak second refinement expert would find it difficult to cause any effective damage to Chumu. As for a peak second refinement expert, the blood shark robe and blood shark armor could also provide some protection and increase Chumu's survivability. The value of such treasured armors was extremely shocking. To any peerless second refinement expert, they were extremely valuable. Once people found out about it, it would immediately cause a bloodbath. Therefore, second Saint King had added some tricks when he had refined them. From the outside, one would not be able to tell that they were treasured armors. It was even difficult to sense their aura. Unless one's attainment in refining treasured armors surpassed second Saint King's. He left behind 5 blood jade robe and blood jade armor for the 5 sword bases of the solitary sword sect. When their cultivation had broken through, they would be peerless first refinement experts and would be able to support the blood jade robe and blood jade armor. It would greatly increase their defensive power and survivability. Unless one was a peerless second refinement expert, it would be impossible to kill them. As for the 5 blood shark robe and blood shark armor for the Sage King Hall, it was a reward for second Saint King. After all, Chumu was able to obtain so many treasured armors because of second Saint King. Secondly, It was a gift for the Sage King Hall of the Sky Blue Ocean after he left. With the 5 blood shark robes and blood shark armor, the human tribe's King Sage Hall's strength had increased. The gap between them and the Sea Tribe and the Sea Beast Tribe was now even. They were no longer at a disadvantage. Chumu still had 5 sets of blood shark robes and blood shark armor left, which counted as 5 sets. He would use 1 set for himself and keep the other 4 for now. As for the 15 sets of blood jade equipment, he could take them back to the True Sword Sect and use them as a reward for the supreme experts of the True Sword Sect in the future. After all, if the True Sword Sect were to develop, there would definitely be peerless powerhouses in the future. After more than 2 years, Chumu also obtained the route map. He knew which direction to go in order to return to the deep blue continent. According to the markings on the map, with my speed, it will take me about 2 months to return to the deep blue continent. I still have about half a year left. I will first obtain the Earth Essence and master the second layer of the Sword God's Descent secret technique before meeting up with Brother Kong Lu. Chumu thought to himself, I just don't know if Gul Wankong and the other 2 have left the land of exile. If they haven't, it will be troublesome to leave in the future. While thinking, he flew. With Chumu's flying speed, it wasn't easy for him to cross the distance of hundreds of thousands of miles. When he flew out of the sky blue sea region, Chumu's heart suddenly trembled. He felt that something bad was about to happen. His high-speed flight came to a sudden stop. There was a rumble in front of him, and a terrifying light shot up from the calm sea surface. It was extremely fast and powerful. Under the countless white waves, there was a cold light and a shocking murderous aura. Chumu was almost hit by the attack. After the first attack appeared, the second, third, and fourth attacks locked onto Chumu from all directions. This was a sneak attack that had been planned for a long time. This was an ambush that had been prepared for a long time. Chumu definitely wouldn't be able to avoid it. Indeed, Chumu's senses weren't wrong and he reacted quickly. He avoided the first attack, the second attack, and the third attack. However, he didn't manage to avoid the fourth attack. This was because the fourth attack was the strangest. It was like a sea dragon. When Chumu dodged it, it suddenly turned and went from the top to the bottom. It was like a meteorite falling down. With a rumble, Chumu was directly hit. He instantly rushed to the bottom of the sea along with the head of the sea dragon. 4 figures appeared. 2 of them were floating in the air. They were in human form, but they were from the Sea Tribe. The other 2 were half submerged and half floating in the sea. One was a black sea dragon that was 200 feet long, and the other was a giant octopus with 8 tentacles. They were the strongest and second strongest experts of the sea race, and the strongest and second strongest experts of the sea beast race. Ever since the news of Blood Shark Ancestor's death spread, the Sea Tribe had been monitoring the movements of King Sage Hall. When Chumu appeared and left, the Sea Tribe quickly received the news. Previously, the Sea Tribe had secretly discussed with the Sea Beast Tribe to eliminate the 15 Saint Kings of King Sage Hall. This was because they didn't know that Chumu was only there temporarily and would leave soon. In the future, he might not come back. Eliminating the 15 Saint Kings would weaken the top combat strength of the human tribe and attack the morale of the human tribe. It would kill 2 birds with 1 stone and suppress the human tribe again. Therefore, after a secret discussion, they came up with a plan. Once the 15 Saint Kings left the King Sage Hall, they would find a suitable opportunity to kill them. For this, the 2 tribes had sent out their 2 most powerful sovereigns. With 4 sovereigns joining forces, there was no reason why they could not kill the 15 Saint Kings. The reason why they chose to attack when they just left Sky Blue Sea region was that they were worried that other Saint Kings from the human tribe would come to help. Since they had decided to do it, they had to do it well. Now, it seemed that their plan had been carried out perfectly and had achieved result. The last attack was from the Sea Dragon King of the Sea Beast clan. As the strongest expert of the Sea Beast clan, even if he was at the peak of second refinement, He would still be injured if he was hit by that attack, let alone when he was caught off guard. Therefore, as they expected, the 15 Saint Kings from the human tribe who fell into the sea after being attacked would be severely injured, if not dead. He's not dead. Sea Dragon King's eyes flashed with surprise. The sea was their world. Within a certain range, they could clearly sense everything. The human tribe Saint King who was directly hit by his blow was still alive, which surprised him. Then kill him, a sea tribe expert in the sky said coldly. His face was long and narrow and his nose was very sharp. He looked very sharp. He was from the swordfish tribe of the sea tribe. He was the second strongest expert of the sea tribe and was even more powerful than Blood Shark ancestor. 4 powerful spiritual powers swept out and locked onto the figure in the sea. In such an environment, the sea tribe had the advantage. Even if Chu Mu tried his best to conceal his aura, it was inevitable that he would be sensed. Therefore, Chu Mu's plan to launch a surprise attack and severely injure or even kill one of them naturally failed. Since he could not launch a sneak attack, he could only fight head-on. The Ocean Dragon King's dragon head attack was extremely powerful and sudden. It was impossible to defend against. In such a situation, if it was before, even if Chu Mu didn't die, he would be heavily injured as they expected. Fortunately, he was wearing the Blood Shark robe and Blood Shark armor. The 2 layers of protection absorbed 40% of the power of the dragon head, which had reached the pinnacle of second refining. The remaining 20% went through the Blood Shark robe and Blood Shark armor and hit Chu Mu's body. Chu Mu also mobilized the divine wilderness sword energy in his body to cooperate with the power of his sacred body to resist. The pinnacle of the 9 stars sword energy and the pinnacle of the 9th level sacred body could not be compared to 20% of the power of the pinnacle of second refining. However, it could still resist a little and reduce the destructive power. Moreover, when the power of the dragon head penetrated the Blood Shark robe and Blood Shark armor, Chu Mu had already reacted and mobilized his own power to resist wave after wave. In the end, all resistance was defeated. However, Chu Mu had successfully weakened 10% of the power. The remaining 10% of power hit his body. Even though Chu Mu's saint body had reached the peak of the 9th rank and was astonishingly strong, it was still unable to withstand 10% of the dragon head's power. However, it was fortunate that his saint body had reached the peak of the 9th rank. The life force in his body was even more astonishing. Adding on the nourishment of the innate water spirit, his saint body was even more pliable and tough, allowing him to better withstand the attack. Finally, he followed the momentum downwards and used a power dissipation technique. With all these factors combined, Chu Mu was still injured. However, the injury was not serious. With the combination of his powerful vitality and the wood form origin source vitality, he recovered quickly. If not for the Blood Shark robe and Blood Shark armor that had neutralized 80% of the power, Chu Mu would have been in danger this time. However, the Blood Shark robe and Blood Shark armor were not omnipotent. The attack of the pinnacle of second refining had already exceeded the defensive level of the Blood Shark robe and Blood Shark armor. Therefore, although they had neutralized 80% of the power, the Blood Shark robe and Blood Shark armor had almost exhausted all of their power. They would need some time to recover. If they were attacked again, they would definitely be damaged. Chu Mu knew this. Therefore, he had quickly changed into Blood Shark armor and Blood Shark robe. He's not injured? The 2 Sea Tribe experts were shocked. The Sea Dragon King was also shocked. He knew very well how powerful the Dragon Head's attack was. Maybe he's forcing it. The 8-Clawed King said, the human tribe has always been very cunning. The 8-Clawed King's words were supported by the other 3 experts. The Sea Dragon King was very confident in his Dragon Head's attack. This human must be forcing himself to act as if he was not injured in order to confuse them. Unfortunately, it was all fake. He had to die. The 4 experts did not hide their conversation. Therefore, Chu-Mu heard everything clearly. Whether it's true or not, you'll know once you try. Chu-Mu smiled faintly, but there was a cold glint in his eyes. When he left the sky blue sea region and was on his way back to the deep blue continent, he was attacked. Moreover, the attackers were 4 extremely powerful fellows. They were all at the advanced second refining or even the peak second refining. They really thought highly of him. Chapter 1921. Above the deep blue ocean, under the endless blue sky, Chu-Mu was surrounded by ocean species and ocean beast species experts. Chu-Mu took a glance and knew the identities of these 4 experts because the Saint King Palace's Saint Kings had told him before. The first and second strongest experts from the Sea Tribe and the first and second strongest experts from the Sea Beast clans had joined forces to ambush him. Chu-Mu did not know how to express his feelings. With 2 swords in his hands, Chu-Mu's strength had reached the intermediate second refining. Blood prison burns the sky. Without hesitation, Chu-Mu used his first secret skill. He burned 40% of his blood essence, and his strength increased tenfold. Blood-colored flames spread all over his body, burning fiercely. They were extremely vigorous, dyeing the sky red. His strength increased further. The Sword Realm was activated and the Sword Realm transformation was used. 2 years of consolidation had allowed Chu-Mu's sword domain transformation to increase even further. It had increased from 5 times to 7 times. Under the 7 times increase, Chu-Mu's strength had surpassed the middle stage of the second refinement. However, this was far from enough, because his opponents were 4 people. Every one of them had absolute strength that was above his. Under their combined strength, Chu-Mu was unable to contend against them. The 4 experts are all stronger than me. I have to kill one of them to intimidate them. Only then can I seize the opportunity to escape, Chu-Mu said to himself. He did not want to kill all 4 experts as it was unrealistic, unless he could increase his strength further. With a quick thought, Chu-Mu chose his target. All of this happened in an instant. Sword God's Descent. Chu-Mu used his last secret skill and the sharpness increased tenfold. His strength soared to the advanced second refining. In terms of absolute strength, he had increased another level. In an instant, Chu-Mu's aura increased, causing the 4 experts to widen their eyes. Secret skill. That's right. He's not as strong as us. He's relying on secret technique. Although they relied on secret techniques to increase their strength, it was still very shocking. This was because at the level of peerless experts, most of the secret techniques were ineffective. Therefore, only a small number of peerless experts had mastered secret technique. Moreover, most of them had only mastered one type. On the other hand, secret techniques that could instantly increase one's strength were more difficult to cultivate or had greater side effects. The 3 secret skills that Chu-Mu had just performed were all instantaneous. The value of each of them was indescribable. The eyes of the 4 experts flickered with greed. Although it was said that the secret techniques of the human race could only be used by humans, once they obtained them, they would be able to research and decipher them. After that, they would be able to modify the secret techniques many times to make them suitable for their own race. For a moment, the 4 powerhouses changed the idea of killing Chu-Mu to capturing him alive. However, before capturing him alive, they had to severely injure him and make him lose all his strength. It was a change from killing to severely injuring. This meant that when they attacked, they would subconsciously hold back a little. This undoubtedly gave Chu-Mu a greater opportunity. In the blink of an eye, all these thoughts flashed through his mind. Chu-Mu moved. Sword Chi Shadow after Shadow Change. This move was the Sword Chi Shadow that Chu-Mu had continuously perfected. After integrating the essence of the Ghost Dragon Disorienting Track Step and the Ghost Dragon Shadowless Body, he had further improved in the past 2 years. It was a more profound application. Hundreds of figures appeared. Each of them looked very real. It was difficult to find any flaws in their appearance and aura. It was difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. These hundreds of figures quickly rushed out. Each of them held 2 swords and charged towards the 4 experts. The feeling of the impact of the killing intent was very real. It was as if they were really coming to kill. The greatest advantage of the Sea Tribe and the Sea Beast clan was their own body and the talent of their race. In terms of the richness of martial arts, they were more or less incomparable to the cultivators of the human race. Although they were strong, it was difficult for them to distinguish whether the figures that were charging towards them were real or fake. "I don't care if they are real or fake. Destroy all of them," the Sea Dragon King roared. In the shocking roar, a terrifying force drove the seawater and condensed into a sea dragon that was 10 feet long. It rushed out and smashed the figures one after another. The 8-clawed king's 8 claws were like long whips that swept through the void. Wherever they passed, the void trembled and the seawater surged. The afterimages were also shattered and dissipated. The 2 experts of the Sea Tribe, Ancestor Swordfish and Ancestor Mingjing, also attacked. Grandmaster Swordfish waved his hand and shot out arrow-shaped beams of light. Like a torrential downpour, they pierced through the afterimages one after another, shattering them and dissipating them. Meanwhile, Grandmaster Mingjing clapped his hands together and a huge black palm print descended from the sky like a meteor, instantly shattering dozens of afterimages. The afterimages shattered one after another, transforming into clouds that spread out. The 4 supreme experts were all searching for Chu Mu's figure. Suddenly, Ancestor Swordfish's body tensed up. He only felt that he was locked on by a terrifying sharpness. The sharpness was incomparably cold, and the chill penetrated straight into his bones, almost freezing his body. This was too sudden and unexpected. It was completely out of Ancestor Swordfish's expectations. Before he could react, the terrifying sword light had already torn through the void and silently shot towards the back of his head. After displaying the sword chi shadow transformation, Chu Mu's real body intertwined among them and headed towards his target, Ancestor Swordfish. Among the 4 experts, Ancestor Swordfish was the 2nd strongest expert of the Sea Tribe. His strength was about the same as the 2nd strongest expert of the Sea Beast Tribe, the 8-clawed king. He was a good target to attack. However, Ancestor Swordfish did not reveal his true body and was in midair. The 8-clawed king was floating in the sea and had a huge body, which made it harder to penetrate. Chu Mu's goal was to kill one of the 4 experts by surprise with a single sword strike. Not only could he weaken the opponent's strength, but he could also create a deterrent effect, which would buy him time to escape. This sword was the result of Chu Mu's instantaneous thinking. It could be said to be a sword without any flaws. If one had to point out what it had, it would be strength. If the swordfish ancestor didn't hide his strength, then the success rate of this sword would be over 90%. Cloud-piercing sword style. As the clouds and mist filled the air and overlapped with the clouds and mist after the afterimages were shattered, Ancestor Swordfish was unable to distinguish between north and south for a moment. The sword light was extremely condensed. Without any sound, its speed reached a shocking peak. It integrated all of Chu Mu's strength into it. Its sharpness was incomparably terrifying. Moreover, it even used the sharp metal spirit's energy to gather at the tip of the sword. The space was silently pierced and torn apart. A spot of extremely condensed golden light shuttled through the clouds and mist, piercing into the back of Ancestor Swordfish's head. The terrifying sharpness tore through his defense and pierced deep into his brain. The terrifying sword will, sword origin, and metal spirit all poured into Ancestor Swordfish's brain, crushing his brain in an instant. His consciousness was in chaos, and he was on the verge of collapse. It could be said that this sword strike had crippled more than half of Ancestor Swordfish. Ancestor Swordfish finally came to his senses, but his consciousness was in chaos, and he could not distinguish between north and south. He attacked randomly in front and from the side, and could not affect Chu Mu. Ancestor Ming Jing also came to his senses. In shock and anger, he grabbed with his hand, and a thick black stick appeared in his hand. He smashed it fiercely at Chu Mu. Wind and thunder roared, and the void trembled. In an instant it was as if the sky had collapsed. The entire sky was filled with the shadow of the black stick, and nothing else could be seen. Under this stick, everything would be smashed. Under the terrifying whistling sound, Chu Mu's scalp went numb. Although the blood shark robe and blood shark armor had amazing defense, this stick was smashing down from above, aiming at Chu Mu's head. It was a place that the blood shark robe and blood shark robe could not defend. This was also a limitation of the blood shark robe and blood shark armor. Therefore, Chu Mu could not take this stick head-on. Fortunately, although the power of this stick was terrifying and would shatter one's body upon impact, its speed was slightly slower, and that slight delay was enough. The Eternal Spirit sword slashed out with an astonishing sharpness, and Ancestor Swordfish's head immediately flew up. With a kick, Chu Mu kicked Ancestor Swordfish's headless body directly into the black stick that was smashing down from above. Then, his body fell rapidly as he constantly adjusted his strength. The shadow of the black stick smashed down from above, and the terrifying pressure was as if the sky had collapsed. It was as if they had fallen into doomsday, and it made people feel despair. The Sea Dragon King and the Eight-Clawed King looked at the terrifying shadow of the black stick with fear in their eyes. The strength of the top expert of the Sea Tribe, Ancestor Ming Jing, was indeed terrifying. The Sea Dragon King did not have the confidence to defeat him, and at best it would be a draw. With a loud bang, Ancestor Swordfish's headless body was directly struck by the cudgel and shattered into countless pieces of flesh and blood that shot out in all directions. Ancestor Ming Jing's face turned extremely ugly. The stick that was launched in anger was extremely powerful, and it was difficult to stop it. Although Ancestor Swordfish's head was chopped off, he was not really dead. As long as he could kill Ancestor Swordfish and reattach his head, he would be able to recover after a period of recuperation. But now, his body was smashed, and it was impossible to reattach it. Even if he could retrieve Ancestor Swordfish's head, he would have to pay a higher price to reattach his body. That price was enough to make Ancestor Ming Jing's heart ache. Moreover, it would take a long time, at least a few decades. The most important thing was that Ancestor Swordfish's body was smashed by his own stick. That feeling was driving Ancestor Ming Jing mad, and he was enraged to the extreme. "Human! You deserve to die. You must die." A horrifying aura surged out from the body of Ancestor Ming Jing. That body of his, which looked strong to begin with, seemed to have expanded by another size, as he exuded an extremely frightening aura and pressure. Exerting his strength, the speed of the stick that was smashed down increased by 30%, and the power was even more horrifying. The space under the shadow of the stick could not withstand it at all, as it shattered, and a black trench was smashed out. Chapter 1922. The black cudgel was huge and it covered the sky. When it struck down, it was as if the sky was collapsing. Its power was invincible and it could destroy everything. The space around the black cudgel was completely sealed. There was no way to escape. Although Chu Mu could break through the seal with his two swords, he would need some time. Just a little bit of time and the black cudgel would catch up with him. The power of the cudgel was unstoppable. Chu Mu could only continue to descend. He increased his speed and rushed into the sea in an instant. Moreover, he dived rapidly. With a thought, slivers of blue light instantly diffused out of his body. They wandered between Chu Mu's limbs and bones, covering his entire body and wrapping him up. They emitted a weak blue light, and slivers of a gentle aura diffused out. Suddenly, Chu Mu felt that there was no longer any animosity between him and the sea. It was as if he was born in the sea and grew up in the sea. He had a sense of familiarity with the sea that came from his bones and soul. This was the effect of the innate water spirit. After obtaining the innate water spirit, it was more or less damaged because it was taken from someone else's body. It was not strong enough. Therefore, Chu-Mu had been nourishing it and had never used it, afraid that it would damage the foundation of the innate water spirit. Now, after 2 years, Chu-Mu had continuously fed the innate water spirit with water crystals, causing the power of the innate water spirit to more than double. Naturally, he could use a part of its power. It was enough if it was not used in battle. Like a fish in water, there was no obstruction. This caused Chu-Mu's speed to increase by a lot, and he quickly dove downwards. At the same time, the terrifying black rod heavily smashed downwards. The terrifying pressure caused the surface of the ocean to sink downwards, forming a basin. Immediately after, the black rod smashed into the surface of the ocean, causing a boom that was incomparably ear-piercing. The ocean seemed to have been angered and began to roar. Under the black cudgel, a terrifying power exploded. 10,000 tons of sea water exploded and countless huge white waves rushed into the sky. The power could easily injure a first refinement expert. Under the cudgel, the sea water that was dozens of miles long was split into 2 sides and collapsed downward. Then, the surrounding sea water was replenished at an astonishing speed and momentum. The white waves in the sky also crashed down heavily. The sea was turbulent and all the fish and prawns within a few hundred miles were shattered. Vortexes appeared one after another, and undercurrents were generated. As Chu-Mu dove down, he also felt the terrifying power of the attack. The shock waves caused his blood to churn. However, there was still some distance between them. Chu-Mu himself was not weak, and he used his own strength to resist the attack. With the blood shark robe and blood shark armor, Chu-Mu successfully resisted the attack of the black rod. Of course, it was also because he had dived into the sea, which was equivalent to being attacked indirectly. If it was a direct attack, it would be difficult to defend against it. The attack was not over yet. Countless undercurrents and vortexes rushed over. However, Chu-Mu, who had activated the innate water spirit power, was like a fish in water in the sea. In the face of the undercurrents and whirlpools, he was also equipped with a considerable resistance. He took advantage of the situation, drifted in the undercurrents and whirlpools, and finally turned the danger into safety. Old Ancestor Ming Whale's face, which was already dark, was now as dark as the bottom of a pot that had not been washed for decades. His eyes were wide and bloodshot, and he was incomparably ferocious and furious. The sea below gradually regained its calmness. Sea Dragon King, 8-Clawed King, is that human dead yet? Old Ancestor Ming Whale asked. Although he was very confident in the power of his attack, he was not sure when he thought about how the human was not injured at all after being hit by the Sea Dragon King's dragon head. Sea Dragon King and 8-Clawed King were in the sea, so they were more sensitive to the movements in the sea than he was. Sea Dragon King and 8-Clawed King carefully sensed. Sea Dragon King's eyes were filled with uncertainty, as if he could not be sure. He's not dead, but his aura is very weak and indistinct, as if he must be too severely injured, and his aura has weakened. He sank to the bottom of the sea, so it's harder to detect him, 8-Clawed King said. Oh! The fury in Old Ancestor Ming Whale's eyes subsided slightly. He leaped down and landed in the sea. Through the sea, he sensed carefully. After a long while, he finally opened his eyes, still somewhat bewildered. Just like what the Sea Dragon King had said, the aura of the human clan was faintly discernible and extremely weak. Could it be that the 8-Clawed King was right, that the human clan was so severely injured that his aura had weakened? Of course, it was also because he had sunk to the bottom of the sea. After all, even though the sea race had an advantage in the sea and could sense things clearly, they would still be affected if they were too far away. However, while Old Ancestor Ming Whale was enraged by the outcome of Old Ancestor Swordfish, he could not help but be wary. That human was way too cunning. No one could tell if he was truly severely injured, or if he was up to something else. Time passed bit by bit. Old ancestor Ming Whale and the two powerful beings of the sea beast race did not let down their guard in the slightest. They continued to sense for the human. However, the aura of the human was still the same as before, indistinct and extremely weak. Gradually, they let down their guard. Ha! That human must be severely injured. Brother Black Whale, the power of that cudgel of yours is truly frightening. The eight-clawed king chuckled. For an octopus to call a black whale brother, it was pretty comical. I'll go and take care of that human, the Sea Dragon King said all of a sudden as he dove down. His body moved swiftly as he headed towards the aura that he had sensed. Don't even think about it. Old ancestor Ming Whale's face changed. Without hesitation, he dove down as well. Even though his speed would be even faster after he reverted to his original form, there was no time for that at all. One had to know that if that human was truly severely injured, the moment the Sea Dragon King of the sea beast race made the first move, he would definitely be captured. By then, all of the treasures that the human possessed would be taken away by the Sea Dragon King. In fact, even the 3 secret skills that the human possessed would be taken away by the Sea Dragon King. By then, the strength of the sea beast race would slowly grow stronger, and that would be disadvantageous to the sea race. Therefore, no matter what, old ancestor Ming Whale couldn't allow the Sea Dragon King to capture that human. He had to get there before the latter. Even if he couldn't capture the human alive, he had to kill him so that no one would be able to get their hands on him. One had to know that the sea race had lost old ancestor Shueisha. In terms of top fighting strength, they were already inferior to the sea beast race. Brother Black Whale, it's been many years since we've exchanged blows. Let's have a good spar today, the eight-clawed king suddenly said. His 8 claws extended and pierced into the sea like sharp swords, piercing towards old ancestor Ming Whale. His motive was naturally to stop old ancestor Ming Whale. Even though the intelligence of the sea beast race wasn't as high as the sea race as a whole, as one of the top powerful beings of the sea beast race who had lived for such a long time and suffered many losses, they had gradually grown up. As such, their intelligence naturally surpassed that of ordinary sea beasts. Eight-clawed king, you're courting death. Old ancestor Ming Whale was enraged as his killing intent blazed. However, he did not want to get tangled up with the eight-clawed king. Otherwise, the Sea Dragon King would definitely get his hands on the human. However, as the number 2 powerful being of the sea beast race, the eight-clawed king's strength wasn't too far off from the Sea Dragon King. Even though there was still a difference between him and old ancestor Ming Whale, it wasn't too difficult for him to hold the latter back for a while. Even if old ancestor Ming Whale were to burst forth with all his strength, he would only be able to suppress the eight-clawed king at best. There was no way he could take down the eight-clawed king within a short period of time. As long as the Sea Dragon King could capture that human, the sea beast race would be the biggest beneficiary. Old ancestor Ming Whale was infuriated beyond anything else. His killing intent was torrential as the seas roared. However, he could not break free from the eight-clawed king's entanglement. The Sea Dragon King had already dived down and was darting towards Chu Mu, getting closer and closer. That human is mine now. Sensing that the eight-clawed king had made his move to stop old ancestor Ming Whale, the Sea Dragon King let out a smile. He could clearly see that the aura of the human was weak, as though he was severely injured. Instantly, his speed increased by a knot. Instantly, a beam of light shot out from Chu Mu at an extremely fast speed towards the Sea Dragon King. It was too sudden and too fast. There was no time for the Sea Dragon King to dodge at all as he was struck by the beam of light. This was the third effect of the Sealed God Compass, Sealed God Light. In his shock, the Sea Dragon King realized that he wasn't injured at all. Instantly, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, he could feel that something was amiss. It was as though his consciousness and body weren't in sync at all. Everything around him seemed to be different as well. A sword light expanded before his eyes rapidly. That golden spot was extremely frightening. Without a single sound, the seawater couldn't stop it in the slightest. Unsurprisingly, that golden spot pierced through one of the eyes of the Sea Dragon King. Before he could even feel the pain, his other eye was pierced by the golden light as well. The skin of the Sea Dragon King was extremely tough and had a shocking defensive power. Even the attack of an upper-level second refinement wouldn't be able to break through it. However, his open eyes were his weak spot. There was no way he could defend against Chu Mu's dual swords. With both eyes pierced, the terrifying sword light continued to penetrate deeper into the Sea Dragon King's mind. The immense pain caused the Sea Dragon King to tremble uncontrollably. He tried his best to retaliate and mustered his strength to block Chu Mu's dual swords. However, there was a feeling that his consciousness and body weren't in sync at all. His reaction was slightly slower by a beat. When powerful beings fought, they fought for that one breath of time. That one breath of time was enough. Chu Mu's dual swords once again burst forth with a shocking amount of power. They pierced through the obstacles and penetrated deeper into the head of the Sea Dragon King. Under the forceful stirring, the immense pain caused the Sea Dragon King's body to twitch uncontrollably. His consciousness was in a mess as his tail swept furiously in all directions. However, it couldn't threaten Chu Mu at all. Burst, burst, burst. After 3 consecutive bursts, Xiao Chen's strength was nearly exhausted. However, the dual swords had completely penetrated into the depths of the Sea Dragon King's head. The Ocean Dragon King's body was enormous. From its eyes to the depths of its head and reaching its brain, there was still a very long distance. It was far from what the 2 swords could reach. Yet, Chu Mu could only do this to send the 2 swords deep into the Ocean Dragon King's brain and cause even more serious damage. Chapter 1923. The 8-clawed king's 8 tentacles kept swinging about, stirring up endless waves that surged toward Patriarch Ming Jing. Patriarch He Jin was infuriated. He swung his black staff at the 8-clawed king, as if he wanted to flatten him. However, the 8-claw king did not go head-to-head with Old Master Ming Jing. He knew that in terms of strength, he was still slightly weaker than Old Master Ming Jing. He wouldn't gain anything by going head-to-head. His goal was to stall Old Master Ming Jing and create an opportunity for the Sea Dragon King. Once the Sea Dragon King succeeded, he would retreat immediately. The battle between the 2 of them caused the seawater within a radius of 1,000 miles to churn. The undercurrents were turbulent, affecting their perception of everything in the seawater. The further they were, the weaker their perception became. Therefore, they did not know that at this moment, not only did the Sea Dragon King fail to capture the human, his eyes were pierced by the human's 2 swords into the depths of his brain. The Sea Dragon King's brain was crushed and his consciousness was in a mess. His body was constantly twitching and his tail was whipping in all directions, stirring up the seabed. Turbidity was rolling in the air as the Sea Dragon King struggled continuously. With his consciousness in a mess, he couldn't send any messages to the 8-clawed king. Chu Mu quickly took out a blood essence pill and consumed it to replenish his burnt blood essence. Even though it couldn't be replenished immediately, it could provide him with a certain amount of energy to speed up the recovery of his depleted energy. Controlling the twin swords with his mind, Lin Fan pierced through the mind of the Sea Dragon King. The body of the Sea Dragon King was extremely strong, even more so than that of Old Master Shueisha. However, his insides were equally weak, especially his brain, which was the weakest part of his body. The body of the Sea Dragon King was way too huge, and his defense was shocking. Chu Mu couldn't damage it from the outside, so he could only target his brain. Time and time again, the struggles of the Sea Dragon King were getting weaker. The Sea Beast race and the Sea race had a natural advantage over the human race. However, there were pros and cons as well. In terms of mental consciousness, they weren't as resilient as the human race. If a human at the high or peak of the second refinement was hit by Chu Mu's God-sealing light, they would not be as useless as the Sea Dragon King. At the very least, they would have a certain amount of resistance. Of course, they would definitely be affected. It was just the extent of the effect. It had to be said that this Ocean Dragon King was truly unlucky. The God-sealing light was something that Chu Mu had only recently grasped, the third effect of the God-sealing compass. It just so happened that he was the first person to try it, so the effects were obvious. When the two swords flew out of Sea Dragon King's eyes, Sea Dragon King had already stopped struggling. His brain was completely crushed, and his chaotic consciousness was destroyed by the power of the two swords. Naturally, he fell into a state of death. With a wave of his hand, Chu Mu quickly stored the Sea Dragon King's corpse into his spatial ring. Unfortunately, there was not enough time. Otherwise, he could have asked the second Sacred King to refine the Sea Dragon King's skin into a set of treasured armor. It would definitely be more outstanding than the Blood Shark robe and Blood Shark armor. However, there were still two experts, the Eight-Clawed King and Old Ancestor Ming Jing, eyeing him covetously. Chu Mu's current condition did not allow him to fight with them. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Using the undercurrent at the bottom of the sea, Chu Mu was enveloped in the innate water spiritual power and quickly moved forward. The battle above had affected their sense of aura, and also provided an opportunity for Chu Mu to leave. A while later, "Stop," the Eight-Clawed King suddenly said. Old Ancestor Ming Jing ignored him and continued to attack. If he stopped when he was told to stop, Old Ancestor Ming Jing, would lose face. Old Ancestor Ming Jing, stop at once. The situation is not right. The Eight-Clawed King could only roar again. Old Ancestor Ming Whale swung his staff again, smashing the Eight-Clawed King into the sea. He knew that although the staff was powerful, it had been blocked by the Eight-Clawed King. At most, it had caused some minor injuries to the Eight-Clawed King. "What's wrong?" Old Ancestor Ming Jing asked. "The Sea Dragon King has already dived down for so long. To think that he hasn't returned yet. I'm afraid there's a change in the situation," the Eight-Clawed King said hurriedly as he tried to sense out. The moment Old Ancestor Ming Jing heard this, his face changed as he tried to sense out as well. "No!" The Eight-Clawed King and Old Ancestor Ming Jing's faces changed. To think that they could not sense the aura of the Sea Dragon King at all. Could the Sea Dragon King have already captured that human and left? Old Ancestor Ming Jing could not help but guess. They continued to sense out. Gradually, they could sense an extremely weak aura that was faintly discernible. Not only that, it was weakening bit by bit. That aura was familiar to them. It was the aura of that human. There's only the aura of that human. Where's the aura of the Sea Dragon King? The Eight-Clawed King was astounded. There was no way the Sea Dragon King would leave without informing him. Furthermore, he could only sense the aura of that human and not the aura of the Sea Dragon King. Could it be that the Sea Dragon King had already been killed? At the thought of this, the Eight-Clawed King felt a chill run down his spine. Without hesitation, he said, "Old Ancestor Ming Jing, I'm afraid the Sea Dragon King has met with a mishap just like Old Ancestor Swordfish. We can't let that human go." "Damn it. If you hadn't stopped me on purpose, would this have happened?" Old Ancestor Ming Jing hollered. The Eight-Clawed King did not refute. Indeed, he had stopped Old Ancestor Ming Jing on purpose. However, who would have thought that the powerful Sea Dragon King would be killed as well? "Now's not the time to talk about this. Hurry up and chase after him," the Eight-Clawed King said hurriedly. Even so, he had no intention of striking out immediately. After all, he had to follow Old Ancestor Ming Jing. It wasn't that he had any special relationship with Old Ancestor Ming Jing, but he had some reservations in his heart. Old Ancestor Swordfish, who was as strong as he was dead. And now, the Sea Dragon King, who was even stronger than him, seemed to be dead as well. The methods of that human were way too frightening. he couldn't help but be wary. Old Ancestor Ming Jing didn't think too much about it. The fact that Old Ancestor Swordfish was killed right in front of him, and that human even managed to escape from his ferocious strike, was enough to infuriate him. Therefore, he was determined to kill Chu Mu. This was something that the Eight-Clawed King couldn't compare to. Furthermore, Old Ancestor Ming Jing had always been domineering and hot-tempered, unlike the Eight-Clawed King who was always cautious. Hence, he gave chase swiftly. Seeing that Old Ancestor Ming Jing was giving chase, the Eight-Clawed King naturally didn't fall behind. However, just as they were conversing and deciding to give chase, Chu Mu had already swum far away. At the same time, he began to rise and left the bottom of the sea. Even though he had the power of the innate water spirit covering his entire body, allowing him to swim in the sea like a fish in water, this wasn't his home ground after all. Furthermore, that would consume the power of the innate water spirit continuously. Sword Light rushed out of the sea and quickly rose into the air. In the blink of an eye, he was thousands of meters in the air. He performed the flying heavens sword-driving technique and burst forth with all his speed. Old Ancestor Ming Jing and the Eight-Clawed King could naturally fly in the air as well. However, their speed in the air wasn't as fast as their speed in the sea. Hence, they gave chase in the sea. However, by the time they realized that something was wrong, Chu Mu had already gone far away. Moreover, his speed was extremely fast when he burst forth with all his strength, not at all inferior to the peak of the advanced second refinement. Hence, it wasn't easy for Old Ancestor Ming Jing and the Eight-Clawed King to catch up to Chu Mu. The distance between them didn't decrease at all. They still maintained their original aura. Old Ancestor Ming Jing and the Eight-Clawed King's perception of Chu Mu's aura was still so weak, barely discernible. Chu Mu flew in the air with the flying heavens sword-driving technique while taking elixirs to recover his cultivation. Currently, he could only use the God-Sealing Light once because it would consume 70% of Chu Mu's spiritual power. Even if it wasn't enough, the effect was very obvious. Even though the Sea Beast clan was inferior to the human clan in terms of spiritual consciousness, the Sea Dragon King, who was at the peak of the second refinement, had a consciousness comparable to that of an advanced second refinement human expert. Yet, it was so obviously affected that it fell into a state of confusion. It was precisely because of this that Chu Mu seized the opportunity to severely injure and kill it. In terms of strength, Chu Mu might not have been able to kill the Sea Dragon King. After all, the Sea Dragon King was at the peak of the second refinement and was extremely terrifying. Chu Mu had used some tricks to kill it, but no matter what, he had won in the end. Chu Mu also felt it from afar. Even though it was very weak, he knew that Old Ancestor Ming Jing and the Eight-Clawed King had not given up and were still chasing after him. Come to think of it, with the death of the Swordfish Ancestor and the Sea Dragon King, the strength of both the Oceanic Clan and the Oceanic Beast Clan was obviously weakened. Their hatred for him could not be washed away even with all the water in the ocean. Even though he was being chased, Chu Mu was smiling from the bottom of his heart. He had joined the human clan's Sage King Hall in the Sky Blue Sea region and became the 15th Sage King. He had cultivated there for 2 years and benefited from the treasured armor refined by the second Sage King. All in all, Chu Mu still had a little sense of belonging to the human clan in the Sky Blue Sea region. Now that he had left the Sky Blue Sea region, he might not set foot here again in the future. Then, before he left, he would make another contribution to the human clan in the Sky Blue Sea region. After killing Old Ancestor Swordfish and the Sea Dragon King, the Sea Beast clan had lost Old Ancestor Swordfish, Old Ancestor Blood Shark, as well as the Blood Jade Emperor King Shark, who had great potential. They had lost 3 peerless experts, especially Old Ancestor Swordfish and Old Ancestor Blood Shark, who were the second and third strongest experts. The Sea Beast clan's losses were smaller, but the one who had died was the strongest expert, the Sea Dragon King. The human clan had obtained 5 blood shark robes and 5 blood shark armors. The 5-sword throne of the solitary sword sect would definitely become a peerless expert in the next few years. The human clan would have 5 more Saint Kings. Under this situation, the human clan's overall strength would only become stronger and their luck would increase. They could compete with the Sea Beast clan and even suppress them. With my current speed, old ancestor Mingjing and the 8-clawed king won't be able to catch up with me. Chumu thought to himself. Looking forward, the various experiences of this period of time involuntarily flashed through his mind. Under the pursuit of the heavenly race experts, he fell into a spatial crack and didn't die. It was true that if one survived a great disaster, there would be good fortune in the future. It was indeed so. Chapter 1924. Damned Human. The Sea Tribe is not done with you. Old ancestor Ming Whale emerged from the surface of the sea and roared at Chu Mu's back view. His voice was filled with killing intent. The 8-claw king did not say anything, but his eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. They couldn't catch up. The human speed was not inferior to theirs at all. There was no way they could catch up to him. Furthermore, they were already far away from the sky-blue ocean and had entered another ocean region. Along the way, they had already received warnings from the powerful beings of this ocean region. If they were to continue, they might incur the displeasure of the powerful beings of this ocean region and start a fight. Although they were powerful, they were alone. Once a fight broke out, it would be extremely disadvantageous for them. Therefore, when they chased to the back, they could only stop and watch as Chu Mu's figure disappeared into the distance, ultimately disappearing from their sight. Anger and hatred were endless like the waters of the ocean. However, once they returned, they would have to restrain themselves and not act like before. After all, both the Sea Tribe and the Sea Beast Tribe were not as strong as before. 8-Claw King, now that the Sea Dragon King is dead, you'll be the strongest being of the Sea Beast Tribe. You can represent the Sea Beast Tribe. I, old ancestor Ming Whale, have always been the strongest being of the Sea Tribe. I can also represent the Sea Tribe. Old ancestor Ming Whale said. I know what you mean. Old ancestor Ming Whale, I agree on behalf of the Sea Beast Tribe. The 8-Claw King said. All right. After we return, we'll gather all the powerful beings of the various races. From now on, the Sea Tribe and the Sea Beast Tribe will be allies. We'll advance and retreat together. Old ancestor Ming Whale said. Chu Mu had basically single-handedly promoted the alliance between the Sea Tribe and the Sea Beast Tribe. However, after the alliance, the Sea Tribe and the Sea Beast Tribe did not mention anything about going against the human race. After all, the human race Saint King had left a deep impression on them. Even old ancestor Ming Whale and the 8-Claw King were wary of him. Before they had absolute confidence, they would not lay their hands on the human race. They were only forming an alliance to prevent the human race from destroying them. That was all. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, close to 2 months had passed. I can finally see land. Chu Mu looked at the outline of the land before him and sighed softly. They had been flying on the sea for 2 consecutive months. Although the scenery was magnificent and beautiful, it was a pity that they would get tired after a long time. After flying for 2 months, all of Chu Mu's strength had been restored. The essence blood that had been burned had also naturally recovered, leaving no aftereffects. His strength was at its peak. When Chu Mu used the blood prison burning heaven secret technique, burning 30% of his blood essence would increase his strength by 8 times. Burning 40% would increase his strength by 10 times. As for burning 50%, the increase would naturally be more, possibly reaching 13 times. However, it would affect his own foundation. Unless it was absolutely necessary, it was impossible for Chu Mu to use it. 30% was a safe standard. 40% was a little risky. Fortunately, he had the blood essence pill and replenished it in time, so there were no sequelae. The closer they got to the land, the clearer the outline became. Chu Mu could also see the scenery of the land clearly. According to the route given by the human tribe sage King Hall in the Sky Blue Ocean region, Chu Mu's first stop after returning to the Deep Blue Continent was the Sky Blue Ocean region. However, the Sky Blue Ocean region wasn't Chu Mu's destination. Hence, after he entered, he didn't make any stop. He directly flew over the Sky Blue Ocean region and headed in the direction of his target, the Sky Bell region. I hope that person is still in the Sky Bell region after 2 years. Chu Mu thought to himself. If he wasn't there, he would have to travel again. As he flew, Chu Mu flew over a grassland. At this time, from the front, there was also a ray of light that flew over quickly. However, it didn't face him. Instead, it passed by him. The aura was caught by Chu Mu. That aura! Chu Mu was slightly stunned. He felt that the aura was somewhat familiar. It was as if he had felt it somewhere before. It left a deep impression on him. Immediately, a light flashed in his eyes. Very good. I didn't look for you. I didn't expect to meet you here. Today, I will take revenge for what happened back then. With this thought, Chu Mu slightly changed his direction. He quickly appeared on the path of the light shadow and intercepted it. What advice do you have for me? The light shadow stopped and shouted sternly. I'll give you a sword strike. Chu Mu's lips curled into a cold smile as he spoke neither slowly nor quickly. It's you. Zheng Li stared at Chu Mu. After a few breaths, he finally recognized Chu Mu. In terms of appearance, Chu Mu hadn't changed much. However, his aura was somewhat different from before. After more than 30 years, the news of Chu Mu's return to the Deep Blue world hadn't been widely spread. Therefore, not many people knew about it. Zheng Li didn't know about it. Therefore, he didn't recognize Chu Mu at first glance. You actually came back from the land of exile. I didn't kill you back then, but I didn't expect that you would deliver yourself to me today. You're seeking your own death. Zheng Li's face immediately revealed a sinister smile. He subconsciously felt that only 30 years had passed. No matter how amazing Yi Shiwen's talent was, there was a limit to how much he could increase his strength in just 30 years. At most, he could reach the upper saint level. That was already very shocking. Today is the day you die. As soon as he finished speaking, Zheng Li immediately attacked. His killing intent was like a cold wind that swept past Chu Mu's body like a cold current. A sharp claw, like a goshawk's claw, tore through the sky with terrifying power. Once Yi Shiwen was clawed, his head would definitely shatter and his body would be torn apart. It had to be said that Zheng Li was a very cruel person. He didn't know how strong Chu Mu was at the moment. He only thought that Chu Mu was at most an upper saint level cultivator. Against an upper saint level cultivator, Zheng Li didn't show any mercy and attacked directly, leaving no chance for him to escape. In his opinion, this claw was enough to tear Yi Shiwen apart. Unfortunately, he was wrong, and because of this mistake, he had to pay a price. This price might not be something he could bear. Facing Zheng Li's shocking killing intent and cruel claw, Chu Mu's expression didn't change at all. In Zheng Li's opinion, it was because his speed was too fast and Chu Mu couldn't react. However, the truth was that Chu Mu didn't think that there was a need to dodge. As soon as Zheng Li attacked, Chu Mu knew that he was at the beginning of second refining. With Zheng Li's relatively average talent, it was already very difficult for him to reach the beginning of second refining. If he wanted to go any further, it would be even more difficult. If he didn't have enough luck, it would be impossible. Zheng Li realized that a long, shining silver sword had appeared in Chu Mu's right hand. You still want to resist? You're overestimating yourself, Zheng Li thought to himself. He didn't take Chu Mu seriously at all. In that instant, there was only a flash of silver sword light that seemed to come from the void, and then go back to the void. There was no starting point, no end in sight. It suddenly appeared and shot toward Zheng Li. Without any warning, Zheng Li suddenly felt his hair stand on end. It was as if the silver sword light was a fatal threat to him. Break. Zhengli lived up to his name as a seasoned veteran. He fought his way out of the weak and reacted extremely quickly. The claw that was grabbing at Chu Mu suddenly changed direction and grabbed at the silver sword light. This grab was like an eagle pouncing on a snake. It grabbed at the snake's weak spot and tried to break the silver sword light. Unfortunately, Chu Mu's sword light wasn't a snake. Zheng Li's claw did indeed grab the silver sword light, but it couldn't break it. Instead, under the sword light, it suddenly trembled and shattered. The silver sword light wasn't hindered at all. It pierced through the void and pierced toward Zheng Li. It was too fast. There was no way to dodge or defend. When the silver sword light dissipated, Zheng Li stared blankly at the shining silver sword. He slowly pulled it out from between his eyebrows. The soft sound of the sword being pulled out from his skull was so clear that it made one's hair stand on end. You. Zheng Li raised a trembling finger and pointed at Chu Mu. His eyes were filled with disbelief. One sword. Just one sword was enough to defeat him, a peerless powerhouse at the initial stage of second refining. Not only was he defeated, but he was also pierced through between his eyebrows, injuring his primordial spirit. Zheng Li could feel his consciousness gradually dissipating. Once it completely dissipated, he would die. Who would have thought that a lowly and weak cultivator, who could not even be called an ant in front of him 30 years ago, would have the strength to kill him today? Moreover, it was only a sword move. Even though he had underestimated his opponent, he couldn't hide the fact that his opponent was indeed stronger than him. Otherwise, he would have been able to react in that instant and respond. No matter what he said now, it was too late. The light in Zheng Li's eyes gradually dimmed. His consciousness also gradually dissipated. He sank into darkness as if he had fallen into an abyss. The silver spirit sword disappeared from his hand. Chu Mu reached out and grabbed Zheng Li's space ring. That was his spoils of war. As for Zheng Li's corpse, Chu Mu waved his hand and a powerful force surged out. It directly bombarded Zheng Li's body and shattered it into dust. The grudge from back then was settled. There's still the other one left. Yu-ho. Chu Mu's eyes flashed. However, he didn't have the time to chase after Yu-ho. Just like Zheng Li, Chu Mu didn't take the initiative to chase after him. It was purely a coincidence that they met here. This coincidence allowed Chu Mu to settle the grudge from back then. Once again returning to his original path, Chu Mu quickly flew in the direction of Tianzhong region. From Tianhai region to Tianzhong region, he still had to pass through 2 more regions. However, they were both small regions. With Chu Mu's speed, he could cross them in a month and enter Tianzhong region to reach his destination. Now, I have enough strength to obtain the essence of Earth. Once I obtain it, I can immediately cultivate the 2nd level of the Sword God's Descent. After that, I will meet up with Brother Kong Lu and fight against the Imperial Court. Chu Mu thought to himself. The light in his eyes seemed to pierce through the sky. Chapter 1925. Among the various regions in the Deep Blue World, the Sky Bell region wasn't considered big, but it wasn't small either. Within the Sky Bell region, there was a mountain called the Sky Bell Mountain. It was an extremely famous mountain in the Sky Bell region. Its outer appearance was like an incomparably huge bell that was placed on the ground. The mountain was 2,999 feet tall. The rocks on the mountain had a bronze luster. From afar, it looked like an ancient bronze bell that was pressing down on the ground. Some of the stronger and more powerful experts in the Sky Bell region knew that the Sky Bell Mountain wasn't a place that any force could touch. This was because the publicly recognized number 1 expert in the Sky Bell region lived on the Sky Bell Mountain. In other words, the Sky Bell Mountain was the expert's residence. The number 1 expert in the Sky Bell region. This name was very frightening. It was 100% deterrent. A sword light was moving at lightning speed. After entering the Sky Bell region, it headed straight for the Sky Bell Mountain. From afar, Chu Mu could see the Sky Bell Mountain. It's just as the rumors say. Chu Mu saw the outline of the Sky Bell Mountain and whispered. It was like a huge ancient bronze bell that was buckled on the ground, as if it was suppressing something. Of course, there had never been any rumors that the Sky Bell Mountain was a treasure. It was just a mountain with a strange appearance and a high copper content. That was all. The person that Chu Mu was looking for lived on the Sky Bell Mountain. I hope he hasn't left, Chu Mu thought to himself. He quickly approached the Sky Bell Mountain and landed on the mountain. Is Huang Chu here? After Chu Mu landed, he released his aura fluctuation. It was equivalent to the peak of the early second refining. It quickly spread out and enveloped the entire Sky Bell Mountain. At the same time, his voice also spread throughout the Sky Bell Mountain. There was a secret cave on the Sky Bell Mountain called the Sky Bell Cave. The #1 expert in the Sky Bell region, Huang Chu, was cultivating in the Sky Bell Cave. As the Lord of the Sky Bell Mountain, Huang Chu could sense anyone who came to the Sky Bell Mountain. Therefore, when Chu Mu landed on the Sky Bell Mountain, Huang Chu also sensed it. However, he didn't care. In the past, there would be cultivators who came to the Sky Bell Mountain. As long as it didn't affect his cultivation, it was fine. To Huang Chu's surprise, this person actually came to Tianzhong Mountain for him. Huang Chu's expression changed slightly when he sensed the aura coming from the other party. It was the aura of someone at the peak of the initial stage of second refinement. He wasn't sure why the other party had come looking for him, but that aura showed that the other party's strength made him wary. Since he had already named himself to look for him, Huang Chu did not continue to quietly train. He took a step forward and his body flashed strangely, directly disappearing from the Sky Bell Cave. In the next breath, he appeared 100 meters in front of Chu Mu and looked down at Chu Mu from above. It was as if they had suddenly emerged from the Heaven Bell Mountain. Is there anything I can help you with? Huang Chu stood above and looked down at Chu Mu as he asked. His voice was steady and heavy, and it was like a large bell ringing by Chu Mu's ears, buzzing without end. Huang Chu's height was ordinary, and his appearance was also ordinary. He was wearing a yellow robe, and the skin that was exposed outside of the robe was a bronze color. It was almost the same color as the Heaven Bell Mountain, and it gave people a very simple and calm feeling. Heavy like a mountain was how it could be described. Long story short, Sir Huang Chu has the essence of earth, right? Chu Mu said directly. He didn't plan on feigning civility with Huang Chu. Going straight to the point was the best way. Hearing Chu Mu's words, Huang Chu's face sank. A terrifying aura was faintly discernible in his body, and it was heavier than 10,000 hectares. Where did this rumor come from? Huang Chu naturally wouldn't admit it. Wind Whisper Tower, Chu Mu said. Hearing the 3 words Wind Whisper Tower, Huang Chu's face turned even uglier. Wind Whisper Tower was the #1 special organization in the Deep Blue Continent. No one could compare to them in terms of gathering information. Therefore, if Wind Whisper Tower said that he had the essence of Earth, then he really did have the essence of Earth. Of course, if he didn't have the essence of Earth, then Wind Whisper Tower wouldn't have said that. I do have the essence of Earth, but it's mine, Huang Chu said in an incomparably solemn voice. His unwavering tone made Chu Mu understand that he wouldn't let go of anyone who coveted his essence of Earth. Sir Huang Chu, the essence of Earth is very important to me. I'm willing to pay the corresponding price in exchange, Chu Mu said sincerely. He also knew that the essence of heaven and earth was very important to experts. For example, Luo Zhenning had the innate water spirit, which enhanced her water arts. The power of her water arts had obviously increased by several folds, allowing her to display her strength better in battle. This Huang Chu walked the Tao of Earth. Therefore, the essence of Earth could also enhance his strength. It was extremely valuable to him. However, Chu Mu wanted to cultivate the second level of the Sword God's Descent secret technique. He needed 8 types of essence of heaven and earth. Now that he had gathered 7 types, he was still missing one, which was the essence of earth. From what he knew, Huang Chu had it. There might be other places, but Chu Mu didn't know. He also didn't have the time to search for it. Price? What price can you pay? Your life? Huang Chu smiled, his eyes filled with killing intent. He was angry. The essence of earth was very important to him. Once he lost it, his strength would definitely decrease. For those who pursued strength, strength was life. Decreasing their strength was similar to losing their life. Since ancient times, there were only a few people who knew about it and came to ask for it. Some of them even used their strength to force it. In the end, they were all killed by Huang Chu. Their corpses were also buried in Tianzhong Mountain. Now, there was actually a reckless person who coveted his essence of earth. He was simply courting death. Without giving Chu Mu a chance to speak, Huang Chu directly attacked. With a wave of his hand, a yellow-brown palm print that flickered with a bronze luster descended from the sky. The palm print rapidly grew in size, reaching a full 30 meters in size. It emitted an incomparably terrifying and heavy aura. It was as if a mountain was smashing down from the sky, wanting to smash Chu Mu into a meat patty. This attack had the strength of a peak early-stage second refinement. The palm print landed, and with a boom, the hard mountain rock where it landed instantly shattered. Chu Mu's figure was nowhere to be seen. There was only an irregular palm print deeply imprinted on the rock. Your Excellency Huang Chu, I have no intentions of becoming enemies with you. Instead, I sincerely wish to exchange. Chu Mu appeared on the other side and used a calm tone to speak neither slowly nor quickly. Die. However, Huang Chu acted as if he didn't hear Chu Mu's words. To him, anyone who coveted his essence of earth had to die. Huang Chu wasn't surprised that his palm didn't kill Chu Mu. After all, the aura that Chu Mu emitted was that of a peak early-stage second refinement, which was the same level as him. Of course, his true strength wasn't at the peak early-stage second refinement, but even higher. Both of his hands continuously waved and a half-meter-long yellowish-brown palm print emitted a thick bronze luster as it rapidly flew towards Chu Mu. Although they were only half a meter long, they had an incomparably shocking aura. Every single one of them had the might of a second refinement initial stage. They were densely packed and there were over 100 of them. They all flew towards Chu Mu and sealed off the space around him. Then, Huang Chu raised his right foot and took a step forward before stomping down heavily. With a bang, Tianzhong Mountain seemed to shake under Huang Chu's stomp. Below Chu Mu, a terrifying light shot up into the sky and condensed into a yellow-brown spike that was covered in a bronze luster. That spike was formed from the copper ore of Tianzhong Mountain, and its power was extremely terrifying. It was clearly at the peak of the early-stage second refinement. The purpose of the hundreds of palm prints wasn't to kill Chu Mu, but to seal off the space around him and confuse Chu Mu's vision, making it difficult for him to dodge. The spike that shot up from below was the real killing move. It had to be said that Huang Chu's move was very unique. However, his opponent was Chu Mu. Over 100 palm imprints simply couldn't cause any trouble for Chu Mu. His figure flashed, and Chu Mu escaped from the 100 palm imprints. The sharp spike instantly missed as well. You have some ability. Since that's the case. Seeing Chu Mu dodge again, Huang Chu was slightly stunned. Soon after, he sneered. His aura instantly rose, surpassing the peak of the early stage second refinement, and directly reaching the middle stage second refinement. Huang Chu had used the power of the earth essence to fuse with his body, causing his strength to increase. Die. Huang Chu shouted the word die for the third time. He pointed with one hand, and a bronze light shot towards Chu Mu like a sword. The bronze light didn't seem to be fast, but it pushed forward layer by layer. Everywhere it passed, the space collapsed inch by inch and pitch-black scars appeared. The heavy momentum caused the heavens to collapse and the earth to crack. This finger had exceeded the peak of the early stage second refinement. Even a middle-stage second refinement expert would have to be cautious. The terrifying power of this finger not only shattered the space under the finger light, but also locked onto Chu Mu, making him feel as if he had nowhere to dodge. It was as if that finger was the heavens and the earth, the world. No matter how he dodged, he couldn't escape the range of that finger. This was a kind of momentum of the world, enough to affect the spiritual will of an opponent of the same level. Unfortunately, Chu Mu's strength was definitely not something Huang Chu could compare to once he unleashed it. Sword Chi Shadow. Huang Chu's body was directly pierced by the light and instantly shattered. However, Chu Mu's real body appeared in another place. Huang Chu was really shocked. It seemed that the opponent wasn't an ordinary peak second refinement expert, but a powerful opponent. I came with sincerity, but you didn't even want to talk. I let you have 3 chances, Chu Mu said indifferently. Now, 3 chances have passed. So what? Anyone who hits my spirit of earth must die, Huang Chu roared. Huang Chu angrily roared. He didn't realize the true meaning behind Chu Mu's words, which was to let him go 3 times. After the 3rd time, he would attack. Yet, once he attacked, the result would be different. Chapter 1926. He had given in 3 times because Chu Mu had come with sincerity and intended to make an exchange, not to take it by force. But after 3 times, if the other party was still unwilling to stop, it meant that the other party was not tactful. Chu Mu would fight back. He was not the kind of person who would do anything to achieve his goal, but he was also not a pedantic person who did not know how to be flexible. However, to deal with Huang Chu, Chu Mu did not need to use all of his strength. Back then, when Chu Mu bought the information from the Wind Tower, he knew that Huang Chu's strength was at the peak of the initial stage of second refining. However, he had the essence of Earth. Once he used the power of the essence of Earth, he would definitely be more powerful. Therefore, at that time, even though Chu Mu had the ability to perform a powerful sword move like the Heavenly Slaughter and Earthly Calamity sword style, he was not confident that he could defeat Huang Chu. It was undoubtedly very dangerous to propose a trade when one's strength was insufficient. Today, it had also proven this point. Fortunately, Chu Mu's strength could not be compared to back then. He grasped the void with his right hand. Under the silver light spiritual sword appeared. Let's end the battle as soon as possible so that the power of the spirit of earth will not be overused, Chu Mu thought. Huang Chu used the power of the spirit of earth, which would naturally be consumed. The longer the battle, the more power the spirit of earth would consume. Once it was overused, even if Chu Mu obtained it, he would not be able to use it immediately. He would have to spend time and energy to cultivate it. Sword Realm Change. Now Chu Mu could add the power of the Sword Realm to the sword in his hand, increasing its power by 7 times. The strength of the peak of the initial stage of second refining had reached the middle stage of second refining. Moreover, it was close to the peak. This was already more powerful than Huang Chu when he used the spirit of earth. However, Chu Mu did not intend to stop there. This was because Huang Chu had grasped the spirit of thick earth. He might even have grasped a secret technique related to the spirit of thick earth. Once he used it, his strength would soar again. He might reach the peak of the middle stage of the second refinement or even higher. In that case, the power of the spirit of thick earth would definitely be consumed. It was fine if he did not attack, but if he did attack, he would quickly finish off his opponent. Sword God Descends. Chu Mu immediately activated the power of the Sword God's Descent secret technique that had recovered a little bit in his body. The sharpness of the silver light spirit sword increased tenfold. All of this happened in an instant. Huang Chu could feel Chu Mu's aura rising from the peak of the initial stage of second refinement to the middle stage of second refinement. Then, it rose again and reached the peak of the middle stage of second refinement. Huang Chu could vaguely feel that Chu Mu was half a step into the advanced stage of second refinement. Huang Chu's expression changed drastically. Such strength had already surpassed his own. Although activating the spirit of thick earth to use the secret method would cause damage to the spirit of thick earth and it would take a long time for it to recover, there was no other way at this moment. Huang Chu had to use the secret method. However, just as he activated the power of the spirit of thick earth and was about to use the secret method to increase his strength, a silver sword light appeared in front of his eyes. It seemed to have no beginning or end. The whole world disappeared. Only the silver sword light pierced through, eternal and indestructible. It was so fast that it surpassed time and space. It also surpassed Huang Chu's reaction and his thoughts. He could only watch as the incomparably bright silver sword light pierced between his eyebrows. Then, it broke through all his defenses and pierced into his mind. Under the explosion of a terrifying power, it raged in his mind and wantonly destroyed his spiritual world. His primordial spirit was directly pierced and the consciousness within began to collapse. Even if I die, I won't let you get the spirit of thick earth. Moreover, you will die too. Huang Chu's collapsed consciousness erupted with the last of his ruthlessness. He wanted to detonate the spirit of thick earth. This way, not only would Chu Mu not get the spirit of thick earth, but at such a close distance, he would also be affected by the explosion of the spirit of thick earth. Even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. In your dreams. Chu Mu let out a low roar. The silver light spirit sword trembled. Under the true intent of quake, Huang Chu's consciousness quickly collapsed. Furthermore, his primordial spirit shattered. His entire mental world was unable to withstand the true intent of Quake's power and shattered into pieces. Huang Chu's eyes dimmed with the last of his unwillingness. In the end, his consciousness collapsed and he didn't even have the ability to detonate the spirit of thick earth. He pulled out the sword. With a bang, Huang Chu's body fell back. There was a very smooth sword wound between his eyebrows. I wanted to trade with you, but you refused. You had to go to this step. Looking at Huang Chu's body, his dim eyes opened and stared at the sky as if he was saying something. He was filled with unwillingness and regret. Chu Mu couldn't help but whisper. With a wave of his hand, Huang Chu's interspatial ring flew into Chu Mu's hand. Soon after, Chu Mu felt an aura move on Huang Chu's body. It was an aura that was as steady and heavy as a mountain. That aura was rapidly condensing from Huang Chu's body and moving downwards. The spirit of thick earth. Chu Mu roared and quickly moved. His powerful aura directly passed through Huang Chu's body and acted on the aura. He immediately imprisoned it. Then he slashed out and cut open Huang Chu's body. However, he didn't hurt the spirit of thick earth at all. Since the spirit of thick earth was called a spirit, it already had a considerable amount of spirituality. When it was weak, Huang Chu had obtained it and forcibly refined it. After that, Huang Chu had constantly nurtured the spirit of thick earth. The stronger the spirit of thick earth was, the more beneficial it would be to his strength. Therefore, the spirit of thick earth was much stronger than before. It had more spirituality. As soon as Huang Chu died, the spirit of thick earth planned to leave his body. As long as it entered Tianzhong Mountain, it would be free. As long as it was careful, it wouldn't be captured in the future. Unfortunately, Chu Mu had already sensed it and cut off its path. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the spirit of thick earth in his hand. The spirit of thick earth was a yellowish-brown thing. When he held it in his hand, it was very heavy. Chu Mu felt as if he was holding a mountain. If his saint body hadn't reached the pinnacle of 9th level and his strength wasn't amazing, he wouldn't have been able to hold it firmly. It felt good. It seemed soft but was actually very hard. The spirit of thick earth kept struggling in Chu Mu's hand, trying to escape from Chu Mu's grasp. That was impossible. I finally got the essence of thick earth. Chu Mu looked at the spirit of thick earth in his hand and sighed. After such a long time, he finally gathered all the treasures needed for the second level of the Sword God's Descent secret technique. The most important thing was the 8 essences of the power of the world. Now I can cultivate the second level of the Sword God's Descent secret technique. Chu Mu thought. He didn't leave because Tianzhong Mountain would be a good place to cultivate. The famous experts in Tianzhong region all knew that there was a powerful peerless expert living in Tianzhong Mountain. He was the #1 expert in Tianzhong region. Tianzhong region was equivalent to that person's private territory. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't come here at all. For those ordinary cultivators, Tianzhong Mountain was full of copper mines. The gravity was so great that it was difficult for them to move an inch. With a sweep of his spiritual power, Chu Mu found the Tianzhong cave where Huang Chu had been cultivating in seclusion. His figure flickered and he appeared outside Tianzhong cave. He broke the seal, walked in and repaired it. The second level of the Sword God's Descent secret technique requires 8 essences of the power of the world and hundreds of precious materials. I've gathered all of them now. Chu Mu took out all the materials he needed and arranged them in front of him. However, the spirit of metal can strengthen the sharpness of the sword, the innate water spirit can increase the flexibility of the body, the spirit of thick earth can also increase the defense of the body, and the origin of wood can increase the vitality and strengthen the self-healing ability. It's a pity to use all of them. I have to keep some of them. The origin of wood is strong enough. I only need half of it to cultivate. I don't need all of the spirit of metal and the innate water spirit. But it's also very good to cultivate it for a while. The spirit of thick earth is between the spirit of metal and the origin of wood. However, to be on the safe side, I'll take some time to cultivate it. The spirit of metal and the innate water spirit were both controlled by Chu Mu. Then, he also controlled the spirit of thick earth. Suddenly, he had a feeling of compatibility with the Sky Bell Mountain under his feet. The spirit of thick earth was born from the Sky Bell Mountain. There weren't many other treasures in Huang Chu's interspatial ring, and they weren't very valuable. The only thing that Chu Mu cared about was the 300 or so crystals of the law of earth. Chu Mu simply used all of them to cultivate the spirit of thick earth. It should be known that Huang Chu wouldn't have dared to do this before, because the 300 or so crystals of the law of earth were the wealth that he had accumulated over many years. He would only occasionally feed the spirit of thick earth one. Chu Mu's actions were definitely generous. The spirit of thick earth was also very excited, constantly absorbing the power of the crystals of the law of earth. In addition to feeding the spirit of thick earth, Chu Mu also fed the spirit of metal and the innate water spirit. Only the origin of wood couldn't be fed due to the lack of the corresponding law crystals. 10 days later, the 300 or so crystals of the law of earth were all absorbed by the spirit of thick earth. The power that Huang Chu had used before not only recovered, but the spirit of thick earth also seemed to have grown a little bigger, and its aura fluctuations were stronger. Similarly, the aura fluctuations of the spirit of metal and the innate water spirit were more obvious, and their colors were more vibrant. Okay, next, I'll divide the origin of wood, the spirit of thick earth, the spirit of metal, and the innate water spirit. After dividing, he kept part of them in his body. When he used them, Chu Mu's strength would increase, and he could continue to feed them and make them stronger. The other part could be used to cultivate the second level of the Sword God's Descent secret technique, so that Chu Mu could master more powerful secret technique. When he used them, his strength would reach a higher level. Chapter 1927. On the Sky Bell Mountain, the battle between Chu Mu and Huang Chu was very short. Huang Chu had only attacked 3 times in a row. After that, Chu Mu had only used one sword to end the battle. Therefore, it did not cause much of a commotion. No one knew that the #1 expert of the Sky Bell region had fallen. Inside the Sky Bell cave, the seals were all activated. Even if an exceptional expert wanted to enter, it would be extremely difficult. Naturally, with Chu Mu's attainments in sealing, he was unable to set up such a level of seal. This was the original seal of the Sky Bell cave. Huang Chu had spent a large sum of money to invite a sealing master with astonishing attainments in sealing to set it up. Chu Mu sat in the Sky Bell Cave and adjusted his condition. The Sword God Descends secret technique had a total of 3 levels. It was a secret technique that was passed down in the True God Sword sect a long time ago. It was a part of the Sword universe. The first level of the Sword God Descends secret technique could increase one's sharpness by 10 times. The second level of the Sword God Descends secret technique could increase one's sharpness by 100 times. The third level of the Sword God Descends secret technique could increase one's sharpness by 1,000 times. Previously, Chu Mu had mastered the first level, which was a great help to him. After many life and death battles, it had killed many strong enemies for Chu Mu. There was no doubt that the second level would be much stronger than the first level. However, the treasures required for the second level were much more than the first level. In terms of quantity, it had doubled. Now, Chu Mu had finally gathered all the treasures required for the second level. Soon, Chu Mu had adjusted his essence, qi, and spirit to the peak. He opened his eyes and a radiance suddenly shot out. It was like 2 sharp sword light that pierced through the void and landed on the various treasures in front of him. Taking a deep breath, Chu Mu waved his hand and melted all the treasures into liquid. One after another, they merged into the essence of the 8 forces of heaven and earth for them to absorb. From start to finish, it took Chu Mu a total of 5 days to complete. After he was done, Chu Mu once again recovered the power of his soul and other powers he had consumed. Recovering to his peak, Huang Xiaolong waved his hands, and the 8 different kinds of energy of heaven and earth flew up, revolving around Chu Mu. With Chu Mu as the center, the energy of heaven and earth spun faster and faster. Then, the energy of heaven and earth entered Chu Mu's body and melted. Sword God's Descent, second stage. Chu Mu let out a low shout and a strange power kept vibrating. It was transmitted through his body. The power of the first layer of the Sword God's Descent secret technique was immediately activated. It rapidly absorbed the power of the 8 types of world's essence in a special way. The speed of absorption was not fast. He absorbed it bit by bit. At the same time, the power of the first level of the Sword God's Descent that Chu Mu had consumed was rapidly recovering. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time flew by. The power of the secret technique in Chu Mu's body kept increasing. Moreover, the power of the secret technique that was even purer and stronger was gradually replacing the power of the first layer. That was the power of the second layer, an even stronger power of the secret technique. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu had cultivated in the Sky Bell Cave for more than a month. During this time, he was not disturbed at all. From beginning to end, he had mastered the second layer of the Sword God's Descent secret technique. Inside the Sky Bell Cave, Chu Mu stretched out his hand and activated a strand of the power of the Sword God's Descent secret technique. Strands of power gathered on his finger. As it pulsed, it was like a strand of silver sword light. Looking at it, one would feel as if one's eyes were being pierced by needles. It was painful. This is the power of the second layer of the Sword God's Descent secret technique. 100-fold sharpness. It's too shocking. Chu Mu thought to himself. He was overjoyed. The use of the Sword God's Descent secret technique did not have any side effect. Furthermore, it could be used in an instant to increase one's strength. It was truly an extremely profound and powerful secret technique. In the entire Deep Blue world, there was almost no secret technique that could be compared to the Sword God's Descent secret technique. Heaven Burning Blood Prison, Sword Domain Change. Now that the Sword God's Descent secret technique has reached the second layer, my strength will definitely surpass the past. I can even fight against an expert at the peak of the second refinement. Chu Mu said confidently. His eyes shone brightly. In the Deep Blue world, an expert at the limit of second refinement could already dominate a region. Many powerful sects and forces might not even have an expert at the limit of second refinement overseeing them. Ancient forces like the imperial court were extremely rare. With the strength at the peak of the second refinement, if he used the great heaven's might sword style, it would definitely be even more powerful. At that time, even some of the weaker initial third refinement would feel threatened. After returning to the deep blue world from the land of exile, Chu Mu's strength had increased by leaps and bounds in just a few short years. This was unimaginable. However, if it wasn't for the 30 years of accumulation in the land of exile, he wouldn't have been able to reach this step. After all, if he didn't enter the land of exile back then, there was basically no path for him in the deep blue world. After returning to the deep blue world, to be able to obtain such a harvest and increase in strength sounded very shocking. However, it didn't fall from the sky. It was Chu Mu's hard work. He even walked on the edge of life and death to obtain it. The greater the effort, the greater the harvest. There are still more than 2 months left. It's enough for me to rush to the Sky Dragon domain. Chu Mu thought to himself. Now, his strength had reached a certain height. If he wanted to increase it again, it would be very difficult. There wasn't much meaning in continuing to cultivate in seclusion unless he could grasp a cultivation technique that could refine true intent. Unfortunately, he had a cultivation technique that could refine laws, but he didn't have a cultivation technique that could refine true intent. During the 2 years of seclusion, he had spent a period of time to deduce it. However, the difficulty was too great. Without a few hundred years to deduce it, it was impossible to change the foundation of a cultivation technique that could refine laws into a cultivation technique that could refine true intent. This path wasn't feasible for the time being. The other was the sword intent. Now that the annihilation sword intent had transformed more and more, it wasn't far from the complete transformation. Once the complete transformation was completed, Chu Mu's strength would have an obvious increase when he used the sword intent. At that time, entering the third refinement wouldn't be a problem. His true cultivation wasn't peerless and was only at the peak of the saint realm. However, his strength had reached the peak of the second refinement and could even reach the third refinement. Since ancient times, no one would believe it if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, because it was too shocking. With my current strength, there shouldn't be anyone who can go against me in the imperial court if the 10 kings don't come out. After a period of time, when the sword intent's complete transformation is completed, I will even have the qualifications to fight against the 10 kings. Chu Mu thought to himself. He was full of confidence. It was time to leave. His figure flashed as he removed the layers of seals. He quickly left the Sky Bell Cave and flew towards the Sky Dragon domain. In the sky, 2 figures were flying at a fast speed. They swept past and quickly flew towards the Sky Dragon domain. It has been more than 2 years. Where did Chu Mu go? Said Zhan Wuying. His eyes were filled with hatred and anger. Even though 2 years had passed, his hatred and killing intent towards Chu Mu and Kong Lu hadn't weakened in the slightest. Instead, with the passage of time, it had become even more intense. It has been more than 2 years. If he deliberately hid, it wouldn't be so easy to find him, Zhan Wukong said calmly. However, his heart was also burning with killing intent. Zhan Wuji, Zhan Wushuang, and Zhan Wuming were all his brothers. Although they weren't blood brothers, they were closer than blood brothers. Their deaths made Zhan Wukong very sad. He also had an extremely strong killing intent towards the people who killed them. Since 2 years ago, the 2 of them had been sent out by the warlord to kill Chu Mu. They hadn't returned to the imperial court because they hadn't completed the warlord's mission. They hadn't killed the murderer to avenge their 3 brothers. What was interesting was that the Sky Race didn't tell the imperial court that Chu Mu had fallen into the spatial black hole. In the eyes of the Sky Race, the human race was just a weak race. Even an ancient and powerful force like the imperial court was nothing to the Sky Race. Because the imperial court didn't know about this, they thought that Chu Mu was still alive. Of course, in reality, Chu Mu was indeed still alive. Moreover, he was living very well. His strength had increased greatly. In these 2 years, Zhan Wukong and Zhan Wuying had searched almost the entire Sky Dragon domain. They didn't miss a single place. However, they still couldn't find any traces of Chu Mu. Now, they planned to leave Sky Dragon domain and go to other domains to find Chu Mu. After cultivating the second level of the Sword God's Descent secret technique, Chu Mu's strength had increased greatly after using all his technique. He could even fight against experts at the peak of the second refinement. However, his speed didn't increase at all. This was because the increase in his strength was due to the secret technique. It wasn't his own basic strength. If his basic strength didn't increase, his speed wouldn't increase either. However, with his current speed, he wasn't inferior to an ordinary expert at the second refinement. He was extremely fast as he approached Sky Dragon domain. The Heaven Bell region was a medium-sized region, but the Heavenly Dragon region was a large region. Between the Heaven Bell region and the Heavenly Dragon region were 2 small regions. With Chu Mu's speed, he could definitely reach the Heavenly Dragon region in the remaining 2 months. As long as he had enough time, he wouldn't be in a hurry. As he flew, Chu Mu divided his attention. He comprehended the sword of heaven and earth and unknowingly increased his strength. As time passed, Chu Mu also entered the second small domain. After that, he would enter Sky Dragon domain. In front of him, 2 figures flew over. Their speed was extremely fast, as if they were second refinement absolute experts. This caused Chu Mu to be surprised. Since when were the absolute experts of Deep Blue World so worthless? Now, he had encountered them again. When they got closer, Chu Mu suddenly realized that they were from the imperial court. One of them was Zhan Wuying, who had chased after him, and Kong Lu. He didn't know the other person, but his aura was even stronger than Zhan Wuying's. He should be the first of the imperial court's 5 heavenly generals, Zhan Wukong. Very good. Since I met you here, don't even think about leaving here alive. Chu Mu thought. His heart was filled with killing intent. He had already sentenced Zhan Wukong and Zhan Wuying to death. Chapter 1928. Sword Realm. Without hesitation, Chu Mu used the power of the Sword Realm. With the Silver Light Spiritual Sword and the Eternal Spiritual Sword in his hands, his speed increased. Flying Heaven Sword Manipulation Technique. The sword light flashed, and he became one with the sword. His speed increased again, and he rushed towards Zhan Wukong and Zhan Wuying. Zhan Wukong and Zhan Wuying had noticed Chu Mu, especially Zhan Wuying, who felt that he looked familiar. However, Chu Mu was wearing a blood-red robe now. He looked different from before, so they did not recognize him immediately. "It's you." Zhan Wuying recognized Chu Mu. The hatred accumulated in his heart instantly exploded. The endless waves and waves almost made him lose his mind. "You deserve to die." With a furious roar, Zhan Wuying unleashed all of his strength. A loud boom resounded, shaking the void. His body flickered and disappeared without a trace. The next moment, Zhan Wuying appeared in front of Chu Mu. At some point, he was holding an almost transparent short sword in his hand. It was hard to detect, but the sharpness that instantly blossomed was extremely shocking. This sword cut through the void and slashed towards Chu Mu's throat. That sharpness would cut off one's head if it hit. Zhan Wukong also recognized Chu Mu. Although he had not seen Chu Mu in person, he had seen Chu Mu's portrait. Therefore, he attacked as well. His figure seemed to have merged into the void. When he reappeared, he was right behind Chu Mu. Holding the sword in one hand, he instantly stabbed out. The sword light split into numerous densely packed sword rays that engulfed Chu Mu's entire body, cutting off all escape routes and dodging. Pincer attack. Zhan Wuying was at the beginner second refining, while Zhan Wukong was at the middle second refining. The two of them were very coordinated, and they could easily kill experts of the same level. Unfortunately, they could not compare to Chu Mu's strength. Sword God's Descent. With a low shout, Chu Mu activated the power of the second level of the Sword God's Descent. In an instant, the sharpness of the two swords increased by 100-fold. In an instant, his strength at the peak of the beginner stage of second refinement increased by 100-fold. He skipped the intermediate stage of second refinement, skipped the advanced stage of second refinement, and reached the peak of second refinement. A terrifying light blossomed from the two swords, causing Zhan Wukong and Zhan Wuying to shiver. It was as if a formless sword qi had cut through their bodies. They had never imagined that Chu Mu could actually erupt with such a terrifying sharpness, directly amplifying it by 100 times. That's right, 100-fold increase. In the Imperial Dynasty, there were some secret techniques that could instantly increase one's destructive power, but at most, it was 10 times. It was also very difficult to cultivate, and the side effects were obvious. Unless they had no choice, they wouldn't use it. How could they have imagined that Chu Mu would possess a secret technique that could be used in an instant and amplify one's strength by 100 times? That could no longer be described with the word terrifying. If they knew that there was an even higher level of the secret technique that could amplify one's strength by 1,000 times, how shocked would they be? One had to know that even in the True God Sword sect back then, no one had managed to cultivate the third level of the Sword God's Descent. After all, the third level required more than 10 types of heaven and earth essence, and each type required a large amount. Not to mention the third level, even the second level was only grasped by 3 people in the True God Sword sect at its peak. Moreover, the Sword God's Descent secret technique was the absolute inheritance of the True God Sword sect. It was a part of the Sword Heaven and Earth, and was incomparably important. It was an extremely big secret. In the entire True God Sword sect, there were very few people who knew about it. Those who had tried it were all dead, and did not leave any record. If Chu Mu was weak, Zhan Wuying and Zhan Wukong would definitely try to obtain that secret technique. Once they obtained it and cultivated it, their strength would definitely reach a terrifying level. If they gave it to the Imperial Dynasty, they would receive a huge reward. Unfortunately, Chu Mu's explosive strength and sharpness caused their hearts to turn cold and their bodies to tremble. Zhan Wuying's sword slashed towards Chu Mu's throat. It was invisible and extremely fast. However, Chu Mu's sword was even faster. With a flash of silver light, Zhan Wuying's sword couldn't block that terrifying sharpness and was directly cut apart. The silver light spiritual sword didn't seem to be obstructed at all and continued towards Zhan Wuying. Zhan Wuying didn't have time to dodge at all. With a flash of sword light, his neck was instantly cut off and he flew up. The eternal spirit sword trembled, and a terrifying energy exploded. Its sharpness was unstoppable, and it shattered all of Zhan Wukong's sword images before stabbing forward. Zhan Wukong's strength was, after all, stronger than Zhan Wuying. At the critical moment, he dodged, barely managing to avoid being hit in his vitals. Yet, Chu Mu's reaction was even faster. With the heart sword as one, all reactions were within Chu Mu's grasp. With a flick of his wrist, the sword changed from a straight stab to a horizontal slash. It was extremely fast, but Zhan Wukong reacted instantly and dodged. He was slightly injured. Chu Mu changed his move for the 3rd time. Zhan Wukong couldn't dodge anymore and his neck was cut. Under the shocking sharpness, even if Zhan Wukong's neck was 10 times harder, it wouldn't be able to block at all. Double sword, double kill. In just one exchange, Zhan Wuying and Zhan Wukong, who could have made Chu Mu flee in panic, didn't even have the chance to use their full strength before their heads were cut off by Chu Mu's sword. Cutting off their heads didn't mean that they were dead. Their primordial spirits were still there. Without any hesitation, Zhan Wuying and Zhan Wukong's primordial spirits left their heads and flew in different directions at a shocking speed. They made up their minds that even if Chu Mu wanted to chase them, he could only chase one. As long as the other escaped and returned to the Imperial Dynasty, they could bring the news back. Chu-Mu, who could use the 100-fold amplification technique, was definitely terrifying. Maybe he would bring disaster to the imperial dynasty, and they had to pay attention to him. Unfortunately, Chu-Mu's heart and sword as one could cover a 25-meter radius. Everything within 25 meters was within his senses. The appearance of Zhan Wuying and Zhan Wukong's primordial spirits was also within Chu-Mu's control. He attacked. The sword light shot out quickly and caught up to the two primordial spirits, instantly piercing through them. Their consciousness dissipated and their primordial spirits shattered. Easily, Chu-Mu killed the first and second heavenly generals of War Monarch's 5 heavenly generals. Now, 4 of War Monarch's 5 heavenly generals had died under Chu-Mu's sword. As for the third heavenly general, he self-detonated. One had to say that the imperial dynasty's losses weren't small. Or rather, the imperial dynasty's losses weren't small. Once the two of them died, their interspatial rings became Chu-Mu's spoils of war. As generals of the imperial dynasty and top experts of the second refinement, there were many good things in their interspatial rings. This is Void Steps. Chu-Mu picked up a manual and took a look. It was a secret technique that couldn't increase one's strength, but it had miraculous effects in battle. It was the same technique that Zhan Wukong had used before. He instantly disappeared and reappeared behind Chu-Mu. Not bad, I can learn it. I can use it at a crucial moment, Chu-Mu thought to himself. With his comprehension, after reading it once, he comprehended 30% of the Void Steps content. After memorizing the content, Chu-Mu continued forward and comprehended the Void Steps that he had just obtained. To cultivate this secret technique, one needed to use the Space Law Crystal. However, there wouldn't be any side effects when using it. It was just that after using it once, a corresponding amount of the secret technique would be consumed. Once the secret technique's power was used up, it would have to be replenished. Since Zhan Wukong had cultivated the Void Steps, he would naturally prepare a portion of the Space Law Crystal. Among the Space Law Crystals, there were high and low values. The 5 Elements Law Crystal was the most common, while the Space Law Crystal was the most valuable. One Space Law Crystal could be exchanged for 10 5 Elements Law Crystals. There weren't many Space Law Crystals in Zhan Wukong's interspatial ring, only a dozen. He hadn't started cultivating yet, so Chu-Mu didn't know how many times he could use the Void Step. Soon, Chu-Mu entered the Sky Dragon territory and quickly flew towards the valley where he had killed Zhan Wushuang and Zhan Wuming. When Chu-Mu arrived at the valley, there was still more than a month before the 3-year agreement with Kong Lu. The valley was silent. Kong Lu hadn't come yet, so Chu-Mu stayed in the valley for the time being. After completely comprehending the Void Steps secret technique, Chu-Mu took out a Space Law Crystal and started cultivating the Void Steps secret technique. Although the Void Steps secret technique was unfathomable, it couldn't be compared to a secret technique like the Sword God's Descent. Therefore, Chu-Mu didn't find it difficult to cultivate it. Soon, he mastered the Void Steps secret technique. Void Steps. With a silent chant, Chu-Mu instantly executed it. He took a step forward, and the power of the Void Steps secret technique stored in his body instantly spread throughout his body. Chu-Mu felt as if he had entered a spatial crack. He moved forward rapidly and appeared 100 meters away. This was a very magical experience. However, the speed of the Void Steps secret technique was only a little faster than his explosive speed. It wasn't much of an advantage, but there was one difference. The Void Steps secret technique was used in spatial cracks, so it was difficult to intercept. The power of the secret technique, condensed from a Space Law Crystal, could only be used once. Chu-Mu absorbed the remaining 10 Space Law Crystals and stored them as the power of the Void Steps secret technique. He executed the Void Steps secret technique 3 more times. Only by doing so could he familiarize himself with it and control it accurately. He wouldn't lose control and appear in other places after executing the secret technique. Time passed, and soon, a month had passed. 5 figures flew across the sky towards the valley. Their speed was extremely fast, and it didn't take long for them to enter the valley. Brother Chu Mu. Kong Lu saw Chu Mu in the valley at a glance. Brother Kong Lu. Chu Mu responded and looked at the other 4. He had seen one of them before. It was Lei Ba. Lei Ba also looked at Chu Mu and greeted Chu Mu. The other 3 were unfamiliar. The 3 of you, this is the Chu Mu I mentioned. Brother Chu Mu, let me introduce you. Kong Lu introduced both parties. Chapter 1929. Chu Mu recognized the 5 of them and was quite familiar with them. They were all experts at the middle level of second refinement, but because they cultivated the path of space, they could fight against ordinary advanced second company experts. Even if they faced those at the peak of second refinement, they still had enough power to protect themselves. Lei Ba, whom Yi Futian had met in the celestial ancient sacred temple, and they had fought before. Although they knew each other, they were not familiar with each other. He was also an expert at the middle level of second refinement and specialized in the path of thunder. His combat strength was astonishing, and he could even fight against advanced second company experts. However, his survival skills were not as good as Kong Lu's. Wang Sun was a very short middle-aged man. He was only half the height of a normal person and had the strength of a beginner second refinement. He specialized in the path of darkness and was not strong in frontal combat. He was good at hiding and assassination, and had once assassinated an advanced second refinement expert. Although he did not succeed in the end, he managed to injure the other party and escape unscathed. Xia Yongxuan was dressed in plain clothes. His hair was white, and the crow's feet at the corner of his eyes were very obvious. He looked like he had experienced the vicissitudes of life, as if he had experienced countless joys and sorrows. Under his calm eyes, there was always a trace of indistinct sadness. His cultivation was at the advanced second refinement, and he used a sword. He was a sword cultivator. The last person was called Feng Wuhan. He was handsome, and there was a trace of arrogance between his brows. His strength was also the most profound among the group. He was at the peak of second refinement and was also a sword cultivator. Brother Chu Mu, I'll call you that too, Lei Ba said. Brother Lei, Chu Mu said. Lei Ba immediately laughed. Are you the Chu Mu that Kong Lu mentioned? The one who has not reached the unparalleled realm but has the strength of an unparalleled realm expert? Wang Sun suddenly asked with a doubtful tone. In fact, it was not only Wang Sun who was doubtful. Feng Wuhan and Xia Yongxuan also had doubts in their hearts. Kong Lu had found them and explained the situation, but they were still skeptical. Kong Lu, let's make this clear first. If the situation is not what you said, I will withdraw, Feng Wuhan said unhurriedly. His tone had a very unique charm, like a cool breeze. Xia Yongxuan didn't say anything. However, his decision was the same as Feng Wuhan's, as they had already discussed this with Kong Lu before they had come. After all, the imperial dynasty wasn't some small sect or power. It was an extremely ancient and powerful force. Just the Battle King alone was enough to defeat all of them and kill them all. Becoming enemies with the imperial dynasty wasn't a wise choice. However, they had all been oppressed by the imperial dynasty before, and it wasn't an ordinary kind of oppression. Hence, there was a deep conflict between them and the imperial dynasty. Because they couldn't fight back, they had no choice but to live in seclusion. This time, they were persuaded by Kong Lu to come out, but they just wanted to take a look at the situation. If it was like what Kong Lu said and Chu Mu really had such luck, then maybe it wasn't impossible for them to fight against the imperial dynasty. As long as they were careful, there would definitely be a chance. But if not, they could only retreat and hide once more. Don't worry. I, Kong Lu, am not someone who speaks nonsense, Kong Lu said unhurriedly. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Sun's figure rapidly faded. In the blink of an eye, he seemed to have melted into the air and disappeared. Chu Mu suddenly felt a sense of danger. His figure flickered and the finger that he had pointed out from the side suddenly missed. Before he could retract it, Chu Mu also pointed out with his finger. It was like a sword light shooting through the sky. Wang Sun's figure was faintly discernible. He quickly dodged, causing Chu Mu's finger to miss. Then, he reappeared at his original spot. From Wang Sun's disappearance to Chu Mu being attacked, to Chu Mu's failure to counterattack, and Wang Sun's figure reappearing at his original spot, the entire process was completed in just a breath's time. However, Feng Wuhan, Xia Yongxuan, Kong Lu and Lei Ba saw everything clearly. Because of this, they were all extremely shocked. "Brother Chu, your strength." Kong Lu's eyes widened and he could not help but exclaim. To be able to make him, who had always been calm, lose his composure, it was enough to show the shock that Chu Mu had brought to him. Feng Wuhan, Xia Yongxuan, Lei Ba and Wang Sun all stared at Chu Mu with burning gazes. They looked as if they could not wait to see through Chu Mu completely and see through all his secret. "My sudden attack is difficult to defend against even for someone of the same strength as me. Not only did you avoid it, you even managed to counterattack in an instant," Wang Sun exclaimed. "Your strength is definitely not as simple as the ordinary first refinement." Wang Sun was not an expert in direct combat, but he was quite accomplished in the path of assassination. If an expert of the same level was caught off guard and faced with his assassination, they would definitely die. Even if they were prepared, there was an 80 to 90% chance that they would still die. Even if it was an expert who was one level higher than him, if they were caught off guard, they would still be killed by him. No one had told Chu Mu about his sudden attack. Although it was just a test and he did not use his full strength, it was enough to deal with a first refinement expert. However, Chu Mu was able to quickly avoid it and counterattack. Such strength was just as Wang Sun had said. It was not as simple as the ordinary first refinement expert. "Chu Mu, is it true that your cultivation has not reached the level of a peerless?" Feng Wuhan asked. It was not that he did not believe it, but it was too unbelievable. Throughout the history of the deep blue world, there had never been a cultivator who had not reached the level of a peerless yet had unparalleled strength. Even some of the monsters who had dominated through the ages had the ability to escape from an ordinary first refinement expert when they were at the limit of the saint level. This was enough to shock countless people, and it was enough to be recorded in the history of the deep blue world. Chu Mu also knew that these people would join forces with him to fight against the imperial court. It was inevitable that he would be a little weak alone. Therefore, he did not feel angry at Feng Wuhan's doubts. He only released his own Yuanli aura, which was the aura of his true cultivation. "The pinnacle of 9 stars. I really have not reached the level of a first refinement expert. How can you be so strong? Other than my Yuanli cultivation reaching the pinnacle of 9 stars, my saint body cultivation has also reached the pinnacle of 9 stars, Chu Mu said. Even so, it only allows your strength to be invincible in the saint level. It is impossible for you to reach the level of a first refinement expert, Feng Wuhan said, looking as if he could not understand it. Haha, monsters cannot be judged with common sense. Lei Ba laughed. Moreover, you are a monster with great luck. Everyone could only agree with Lei Ba's words. Indeed, since ancient times, as long as a cultivator with great luck didn't die midway, their achievements would be extraordinary. Moreover, this was a heaven-defying monster with great luck. If that is the case, the actual situation is better than what Kong Lu said. I agree, Feng Wuhan said. I agree too. Xia Yongxuan nodded. Being on the same side as someone with great luck would more or less be affected by the other party's luck. It would be harder for one to die and the chances of getting fortuitous encounters would also be increased. Under such circumstances, if they combined their strength, they might be able to deal with the imperial court. There were 10 kings in the imperial court, but currently the warlord was in power. The other 9 kings were in seclusion. Unless it was absolutely necessary, the warlord would not let the other 9 kings appear. That would mean that the warlord had failed. In the imperial court, his power and status would be severely affected, and he would be at the bottom. It would be very disadvantageous for him. As long as the warlord did not attack, they would not be afraid of the imperial court. Taking a step back, even if the warlord attacked, as long as they stayed far away, the warlord alone would not be able to defeat them all. As long as they were alive, they would have a chance. 3 years ago, Chu Mu was able to kill the imperial court's Zhan Wushuang and Zhan Wuming. Now that his strength has increased, he should be able to fight against those at the peak of the first refining or even the peak of the first refining, Wang Sun said. He had personally tested Chu Mu's strength and came to a conclusion. The others agreed with Wang Sun's conclusion. Regarding this, Chu Mu could only agree. Originally, he wanted to release the aura of the peak of the initial stage of the second refining, but now that everyone agreed, he decided to forget about it. Since no one wants to back out, then let's form an alliance and fight against the imperial court, Kong Lu said. I agree, but to form an alliance and advance together, we have to swear an oath to the heavens, Feng Wuhan said. Feng Wuhan added, friends were friends and relationships were relationships. It was necessary to swear an oath to the heavenly Tao. Only then could one feel at ease. Otherwise, in the face of benefits or life and death crises, it was not impossible for brothers to turn against each other. To form an alliance, we have to have a corresponding name, Leiba suggested. In my opinion, the reason why we can gather together and fight against the imperial court is because of Brother Chu Mu. So, let's let Brother Chu Mu decide the name of the alliance, Kong Lu suggested. Okay, Feng Wuhan shrugged and said indifferently. No problem, Wang Sun said. Wang Sunday Xia Yongshuan didn't have any objections. They weren't greedy for fame and fortune. It didn't make much of a difference who came up with a name. Of course, if it was someone else who wasn't as strong as them, they might not agree. After all, the strong were respected. However, Chu Mu was different. As Kong Lu said, they had gathered together because of Chu Mu. To a certain extent, they had to borrow Chu Mu's great luck. Since that's the case, I won't be polite, Yi Futian said. His true strength was probably the strongest among them, so he didn't reject it. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu said, the alliance will be called the Ancient Sword Alliance. What do you all think? Ancient Sword Alliance. Chu Mu's earliest origin was the Ancient Sword Continent. Then, he entered the Ancient God World. This name was also a form of sustenance. Ancient Sword Alliance, let's call it the Ancient Sword Alliance, Feng Wuhan said. He was a sword cultivator, so the name Ancient Sword Alliance was not bad. Since Feng Wuhan didn't have any objections, the others didn't either. The name of the alliance was decided. Chapter 1930. Oaths to the Heavenly Way were very effective. Once broken, one would definitely suffer a backlash. If it was light, one's primordial spirit would be severely injured, and one wouldn't be able to recover without 100 years or even longer. If it was heavy, one would die on the spot. Hence, to cultivators, the biggest oath was the Heavenly Way Oath. No one was willing to break it. Everyone swore the Heavenly Way Oath and formed the Ancient Sword Alliance. Currently, the Ancient Sword Alliance didn't have a leader. It was just a preliminary organization and wasn't complete yet. Who would be the leader of the alliance was a huge problem. It had nothing to do with fame and fortune. The leader of the alliance would have a greater say in the alliance, but at the same time, he would have to shoulder greater responsibilities. The purpose of the Ancient Sword Alliance was to fight against the imperial dynasty. If they failed, the alliance would naturally disband. Hence, it didn't matter if there was a leader or not. There were a total of 6 members in the Ancient Sword Alliance. Feng Wuhan was at the peak of the second refinement, Xia Yongshuan was at the advanced stage of the second refinement, Kong Lu and Leiba were at the intermediate stage of the second refinement, Wang Sun was at the initial stage of the second refinement, and the last person was Chu Mu, who was considered to be at the peak of the first refinement. an alliance formed by 6 peerless cultivators, 5 of whom were at the second refinement. Such an alliance was undoubtedly very powerful. The ancient sword alliance has been formed. Now we should discuss how to deal with the imperial dynasty, said Wang Sunday. According to the information we have, the imperial dynasty has 10 kings. 9 of them are in seclusion. Now the war king is in charge. He's at the 3rd refinement, but we don't know which level he is at. Kong Lu said slowly, the war king has 5 heavenly generals. Currently, the 3rd heavenly general is dead. The 4th and 5th heavenly generals died under Chu Mu's sword. Only the 1st and 2nd heavenly generals are left. The 1st heavenly general is at the intermediate stage of the 2nd refinement, while the 2nd is at the initial stage of the 2nd refinement. If the 2 of them work together, they can reach the peak of the intermediate stage of the 2nd refinement, but they can't fight against us. After a pause, everyone listened to Kong Lu. Apart from that, the war king of the imperial dynasty has 9 saint-level battle envoys. There are more than 1,000 of them. They can set up a battle formation, and its power can threaten a 2nd refinement peerless cultivator. However, as long as you don't fall into the enemy's battle formation, you won't be in any danger. Although the imperial court battle formation was very powerful, it had some flaws. It wasn't flexible enough. If the peerless experts didn't fight it and focused on dodging, there was nothing they could do. Therefore, the battle formation set up by the imperial court battle envoys wasn't much of a threat to them. I think that the imperial dynasty's strength should be more than this. Feng Wuhan said. The 10 kings each have their own subordinate. However, when each king is in power, the other 9 kings would enter seclusion to cultivate. Their loyal subordinates would also enter seclusion to cultivate. At the peak of the royal clan, including the 10 kings, there were over 60 supreme experts. However, they weren't as strong as before. Kong Lu continued. 60 peerless experts. Such a number was extremely terrifying. Among all the forces of the human race, they were definitely at the top. Even the Kanglan Empire or the 4 great sects of the ancient heaven domain, which were also established by saint emperors, could not be compared to them. However, the royal clan was different from other sections. The 10 kings took turns to be in power. Each king had a group of supreme experts and 9-star saint-level experts. Once they entered seclusion, the experts under them would also enter seclusion. They didn't interfere with each other. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the royal clan's strength was only 1/10 of its peak, but it was still very shocking. 1/3 refinement war king, 2 2nd refinement heaven generals, and 3 1st refinement heaven generals. Such strength was something that most sects in the deep blue world couldn't compare to. For example, the Luo River True Palace was a famous sect in the deep blue world. In the sect, there was only 1 supreme expert and he was only at the 1st refinement. That was also why no one was willing to provoke the royal clan. Now, the few supreme experts who had been hunted down by the royal clan all came out. With Chu Mu as the core, they formed the Ancient Sword Alliance. If they wanted to fight against the royal clan, they had to have a deeper understanding of the royal clan. According to what I know, in the royal clan, other than the 10 kings and their heaven generals, there is also a very secret group of experts. It seems to be formed by supreme experts, but I don't know how many there are and how strong they are. Xia Yongshuan spoke in a sad tone. This was his way of speaking. Unknowingly, it would affect others. If it was someone who was weaker than him, or if their will wasn't strong enough, they would be affected and feel an indescribable sadness. However, although some of them weren't as strong as him, they could still resist it. This was also related to the fact that Xia Yongshuan didn't intentionally trigger the sadness. Hearing Xia Yongshuan's words, everyone was shocked. When the 1st Heaven General Zhan Wukong and the 2nd Heaven General Zhan Wuying died, their life tablets in the royal clan shattered. Very soon, the War King found out. The 5 Heaven Generals are dead. Ji Shi, can you calculate who killed them? The war king's expression didn't change at all. He was very calm, but Jishur knew very well how angry the war king was and how strong his killing intent was. "Let me calculate," Jishur said and took out a tortoiseshell compass. With the help of the compass, he immediately started calculating. The turtle-shell compass trembled and the patterns on its back lit up one by one. After all of them lit up, the turtle-shell compass stopped trembling. Jishur's hands kept moving, forming complicated hand seals, all of which hit the turtle-shell compass. Immediately after, light appeared on the turtle-backed compass. As it moved, it seemed to form a small world. Scenery began to appear between the heavens and earth. Gradually, the figure of a person seemed to be about to appear, but an unexpected force attacked it. The figure instantly dissipated, the small world collapsed, and the light disappeared. The turtle-backed compass trembled, and its aura suddenly dropped. "I failed." Jishur stared at the tortoiseshell compass in a daze. His eyes were filled with disbelief. After a short rest, he calculated again, but the result was the same. After failing 3 times in a row, Jishur gave up. "Your Excellency the War King, the person who killed the first and second heaven generals, has a treasure that can seal the mysteries of the heavens. Or maybe he's very good at calculating and can hide from the mysteries of the heavens," Jishur said. "Jishur, please calculate Chu-mu." The War King thought for a moment and then said, "Chu-mu." Jishur heard this and thought for a moment before his eyes lit up. Immediately, he started calculating again. The result of the calculation was a failure. This time, Jishur calculated 3 times in a row. His face was pale and his eyes were filled with exhaustion. After 6 consecutive calculations, he had used up almost all of his mental strength. "Even Chu-mu can't calculate. The person who killed Zhan Wukong and Zhan Wuing is most likely Chu-mu," said the War King. "Your Excellency the War King, that's not very likely," Jishur said. 3 years ago, Chu-mu was only at the first refinement. After 3 years, he was able to kill a second refinement cultivator, and a middle second refinement cultivator at that. It was impossible. I also don't think it's possible, but my intuition tells me that the person who killed them is Chu-mu," said the War King. His eyes were filled with coldness. "Your Excellency the War King, if it's really Chu-mu..." Jishur couldn't finish his sentence. When he thought that it was really Chu-mu who killed Zhan Wukong and Zhan Wuing, he couldn't help but feel cold. Even though he was one of the higher-ups of the imperial dynasty, his identity didn't make him feel safe. Because this speed of growth was too terrifying. If they didn't get rid of him as soon as possible, he would bring disaster to the imperial dynasty. "Send a message to the Sky Clan. Tell them that Chu-mu has reached the second refinement." The Battle King seemed to be speaking to the air. Shortly after, there seemed to be a slight fluctuation in the air. The Battle King stood up and strode down from his throne. He walked towards the back of the palace and continued to move downward. Very soon, he entered the belly of the mountain. He took out a command medallion. Rays of light shot out from it and landed on the pitch-black door. The door gently trembled, as if it had not been opened for a very long time. Following the trembling, an ancient rumbling sound rang out, and the door slowly opened a crack for the War King to pass through. After entering, the door closed on its own. With a bang, it was as if the entire world was shaking. Pitch black, there was only pitch-black darkness. The War King's eyes shone brightly. He could vaguely see many people sitting cross-legged, not moving at all. "I am the War King, one of the 10 kings of the imperial dynasty. This time, the imperial dynasty has encountered a strong enemy. My 5 celestial generals have all died in battle. The enemy's potential is shocking and his growth is extremely fast. He will affect the safety of the imperial dynasty. I, the War King, use my authority as the emperor to ask everyone to help me get rid of this enemy." The War King raised a golden badge in his hand. On the front of the badge, there was an extremely ancient word, Emperor. As you wish, tell us everything about the enemy. My Imperial guards will move out. After a long time, an extremely old voice sounded out. It sounded weak and powerless, as if it could die at any moment. However, when the War King heard that voice, his expression changed. This was an extremely terrifying cultivator. Many years ago, he had already reached the third refinement. Now, who knew how strong he was? Following the sound of that voice, a weak qi, as if awakening, permeated the air. Being within the qi, Zhan Wang instantly felt a sense of pressure. Even a peerless cultivator like him, who had practiced the third refinement, could feel the pressure. How terrifying was that qi! When the Battle King spoke, he immediately told them everything related to Chu Mu. He didn't add any details because the Imperial Guards would naturally determine the threat level of the enemy. After a short while, the old voice sounded out again. 18, 17, 16, 15, the four of you go and kill Chu Mu. Yes. Four voices sounded out in unison. Their voices were extremely cold. The War King couldn't help but shiver. Chapter 1931. Cloud Heaven City, high up in the air, towering over all living things, overlooking the millions of years of changes that had taken place throughout the land. No matter how the tides of time battered it, it would not decay or decay, existing for all eternity, never changing. What? Chu Mu is not dead. The elders of the celestial race were shocked when they received the news from the imperial court. 3 years ago, the captain of the Divine Guard, Tian Daoji, returned and said that Chu Mu was attacked by his heavenly Dao judgment and fell into a black hole. He would definitely die. Tian Jizi also confirmed this, and the celestial race thought that the crisis was over. Now, only 3 years had passed and they received news that Chu Mu was not dead. Moreover, this news came from the imperial court. Although the celestial race believed that the human race was a lowly race, the imperial court was also a powerful force that was worthy of the celestial race's attention. Soon, the elders of the celestial race asked Tianjizi to open the heaven's secret array and calculate again. The result of the calculation made the faces of the elders of the celestial race as black as the bottom of a pot. They couldn't calculate. According to Tianjizi, this result meant that the person was still alive, but because of some reasons, such as the other party having a treasure that could conceal heaven's secrets, it blocked his calculation. This result made the faces of the elders of the celestial race even uglier. This meant that not only was Chu Mu still alive, but he also had the ability to conceal heaven's secrets, preventing Tianjizi from calculating his information. Under such circumstances, it would be even more difficult to find him. And the longer Chu Mu lived, the more disadvantageous it would be for the celestial race. When they thought of the blood-red sky above Cloud Heaven City back then, the elders of the celestial race couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Send out all the Divine Guard to search for Chu Mu's traces. Once found, kill without mercy. A celestial race elder said coldly, his killing intent awe-inspiring. In addition, send out the heavenly kill order to all the races in the deep blue world. No matter who it is, whoever kills Chu Mu will have the qualifications to cultivate our celestial race's martial arts and spiritual arts. Furthermore, they can enter our celestial race's sky god secret realm. In the deep blue world, the sky race's martial path and spirit arts were considered the top. This was also one of the reasons why the sky race were so strong. Naturally, many people from other races also wanted to cultivate. In addition, the god of heaven's secret realm was a very important secret realm for the Tian clan. If one could enter it, they would definitely be able to obtain a lot of opportunities and become stronger. It was extremely attractive to experts of any race. It had to be said that in order to kill Chu Mu, the Tian clan had put in a lot of effort. Following the celestial race's heavenly kill order being issued, the powerhouses of the various races in the entire world were alarmed one after another. Who is Chu Mu? 30 years ago, he was chased into the land of exile. He was only at the early fourth heavenly layer of the immemorial realm. It's only been 30 years. Could it be that his strength has already reached the level of a peerless expert? Heavenly races, martial arts and spiritual arts, heavenly deity, secret realm. Haha, I'll take Chu Mu's life. Because of the heavenly race's heavenly kill order, the peerless experts of the entire continent were mobilized to search for Chu Mu's traces. All of Chu Mu's information had been dug up by someone. 33 years ago, he escaped into the land of exile. He was only at the early fourth heavenly layer of the immemorial realm. In a barren place like the land of exile, how much can he improve? At most, he's only at the 7-star saint realm. No, since the Tian clan issued the heavenly kill order, it means that Chu Mu is still quite a threat to them. Therefore, I feel that he's not only at the 7-star saint realm, but also at the 9-star saint realm. Who knows, he might even be a peerless expert. This sentence was naturally mostly a joke. Originally, very few people knew that Chu Mu had returned to the deep blue world from the land of exile. Now that the Tian clan issued the heavenly kill order, the entire continent knew about it. In the Azure Water Dynasty's True Sword sect, from the elders to the disciples, when they found out that not only was their sect master alive, but he had also returned to the deep blue world from the land of exile, they were all overjoyed and their morale was greatly boosted. However, when they found out that the Tian clan had issued the heavenly kill order, they were also extremely worried. However, in these 33 years, their strength had increased by leaps and bounds, but they were still unable to help Chu Mu in any way. Because it was still not enough. Sect Master has turned danger into safety time and time again. I believe that this time, he will be able to safely pass through it as well. Therefore, what everyone needs to do is to cultivate in peace, work hard, and do our best to increase our own strength and increase the strength of our True Sword sect. If our True Sword sect is extremely powerful enough to make the Tian clan fear us, would they still dare to issue a heavenly kill order to the sect master? An elder said. The True Sword sect immediately set off a frenzy of cultivation. The situation isn't good. After Wang Sun, who was in charge of scouting for information, returned, he looked at Chu Mu with a strange expression and quickly said, "What does it have to do with Chu Mu?" Kong Lu immediately asked. There is indeed a relationship, a very direct relationship. Wang Sun smiled bitterly and said, the Tian clan issued the heavenly kill order, notifying the experts of various races in the continent that anyone who kills Chu Mu can cultivate the Tian clan's martial arts and spiritual techniques, and can also enter the Tian Shin secret realm. Now those experts are like crazy, looking everywhere for Chu Mu's traces. Once they find him, thinking of that kind of result, even though no one was afraid, they still felt their scalps tingle. In the entire deep blue world, the number of peerless experts of the human clan was very low compared to Saint Realm experts. However, the lifespan of peerless experts was very long. It was very easy for them to live for 100,000 years. Therefore, since ancient times, there were at least 1,000 peerless experts in the human clan on the surface. As for how many were in the dark, it was unknown. In the deep blue world, the human clan was not the only major race. For example, the Sea clan was not inferior to the human clan in terms of numbers. In addition, the number of peerless experts in the Sea clan was slightly higher than the human clan. In addition, other races such as the Five Spirit clan also had some peerless experts. However, no matter what race it was, there was a clear gap in talent between them and the Tian clan. For a long time, the gap in talent gradually created a gap in other aspects. Therefore, the experts of the other races were very envious of the Tian clan's martial arts and spiritual technique. Especially the Tian Shin secret realm, it was a very important secret realm for the Tian clan. Not only were there various treasures inside, there were also the martial arts and spiritual technique inheritance of the Tian clan. Therefore, a portion of the peerless experts of the various races in the deep blue world were mobilized. There were at least a few hundred of them. Being targeted by hundreds of peerless experts wasn't good news at all. I'm already considering whether or not to withdraw from the Ancient Sword Alliance. Feng Wuhan shook his head. This was naturally a joke. I now regret making the heavenly oath. Otherwise, I would find a chance to secretly kill Chu Mu. The Tian clan's martial arts can be comprehended by me, and I can even enter the Tian Shin secret realm. Wang Sun sighed, looking very regretful. This was a joke, but it was also a half-truth. However, it also showed how attractive the Tian clan's martial arts and the Tian Shin secret realm were to the peerless expert. The Tian clan will not allow their martial arts and spiritual techniques to be spread out, Xia Yongxuan said calmly, causing everyone's expression to change slightly. Yes, with the Tian clan's tyranny and strength, once one cultivated their martial arts and spiritual techniques, they would definitely become a member of the Tian clan. If they became a member of the Tian clan, it would be fine. However, the problem was that they were not from the Tian clan. In the end, they could only become puppets controlled by the Tian clan. Which expert would be willing to become someone's puppet? Their life and death would be controlled by someone else. The joke ends here. Right now, the outside world is in a state of panic. Once Chu Mu appears, he will definitely be surrounded. The situation is not good for us. In addition, the Tian clan will also send experts to search for Chu Mu's whereabouts. The Imperial clan will not give up either. It can be said that we have many enemies, Kong Lu said calmly. They formed the Ancient Sword Alliance to fight against the Imperial dynasty. They would advance and retreat together. They had to face the current situation together. This was part of the content of the Heavenly Oath. Right now, the strongest person in the Ancient Sword Alliance is Wuhan. He is at the peak of the second refinement. This is not enough. He needs to be even stronger. At the very least, he needs to be at the third refinement. Kong Lu continued. The third refinement is easier said than done. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. The difference between the third refinement and the peak of the second refinement was not big. Actually, the difference was huge. Many peerless experts were unable to break through to the third refinement. Also, Chu Mu's strength is at the first refinement. If he can reach the second refinement, it will be even more beneficial for us. Kong Lu's eyes shone brightly. I know of a secret realm. Perhaps if we enter it, we will be able to obtain an opportunity to improve our strength. Even if we can't reach the third refinement, we might be able to obtain some treasures that will be enough to protect our lives against third refinement powerhouses. If that's really the case, then we really have the ability to fight against the Imperial clan. Everyone's eyes lit up. There's no time to lose. Let's go to the secret realm now, Kong Lu said. Kong Lu had discovered the secret realm more than 10 years ago. He had also entered and obtained some benefit. However, the enemies in the secret realm were too strong. With his strength, he could only explore the outer regions of the secret realm. He couldn't enter the secret realm at all. Even so, the benefits he obtained from the outer regions of the secret realm had increased his strength. He had originally planned to enter the secret realm again after his strength had increased. Perhaps his strength would allow him to enter deeper and obtain more benefit. He would continue to increase his strength and break through to the third refinement. However, the current situation forced him to make other choices. Perhaps it would be better to explore the secret realm together with a group of allies who had made the heavenly oath. After all, if they worked together, their strength would increase further. Perhaps they could enter the secret realm and obtain more benefit. At that time, everyone's strength would increase and they would have a greater chance of fighting against the Imperial clan. Chapter 1932. 4 streaks of light flashed across the Imperial Quartz Mountain. Their target was the Heavenly Dragon Domain. The speed of these 4 streaks of light was extremely fast, completely comparable to the speed of a high-level second refinement expert. The aura they emitted also had a strange fluctuation, as if they were between life and death. It was frightening. They were the Imperial Guards that had always existed secretly in the Imperial Court. Their full name was the Imperial Guards. They didn't accept the direct command of the 10 Kings. Only those with the Imperial Medallion could mobilize them. The Imperial Medallion was a medallion passed down by the founder of the Imperial Court. Even peerless experts couldn't destroy it. The 10 Kings of the Imperial Court would each hold the Imperial Medallion and have a chance to mobilize the Imperial Guards. However, whether or not the Imperial Guards would be mobilized was up to the commander of the Imperial Guards. Only when they felt that the Imperial Court was truly threatened would they appear and eliminate the threat. When one of the 10 Kings used the Imperial Medallion, it usually meant that the situation had developed to a point where it was out of control. Unless the king personally took action, there was no way to resolve the situation. As the Imperial Guards nurtured by the sacred emperor, each one of them possessed terrifying strength. They weren't afraid of death, and it was difficult for them to die. Their life form had already changed, and they were different from humans. Therefore, the Imperial Guards had another name, the Immortal Imperial Guards. In the era when the Holy Emperor was in power, the immortal royal guards were extremely ferocious. Countless people trembled in fear when they heard their name. However, after many years, they had already quieted down. Those who knew about the immortal royal guards were either dead or in seclusion. With the divine sealing compass, Chu Mu's heavenly secrets were concealed. No matter how proficient he was in the art of divination, as long as he hadn't reached the level of a sacred emperor, he wouldn't be able to divine Chu Mu's whereabouts. For a moment Chu Mu was safe. Even the Wind-Whispering Tower, which was known to have information all over the world, relied on divination in many situations. When divination was useless, it was even harder for them to determine Chu Mu's whereabouts. This caused the hundreds of experts who had their eyes on Chu Mu to be like headless flies. The deep blue world was actually very big. Unless one was a sacred emperor, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Under Kong Lu's lead, the 6 people from the Ancient Sword Alliance quickly left the Heavenly Dragon domain. After spending more than a month, they entered a small domain, the Heavenly Mountain domain. The Sky Mountain domain was located in a remote area, and the chi of heaven and earth was relatively thin. Therefore, other than the appearance of a peerless expert hundreds of thousands of years ago, no other peerless experts had appeared. The strongest expert in the Sky Mountain domain was the Taishang Lord of the Sky Mountain Palace, the #1 sect in the Sky Mountain domain. He was at the peak of the 9-star saint level. That secret realm is in the Heavenly Mountain where the Heavenly Mountain Palace is located, said Kong Lu. Heavenly Mountain was the territory of the Heavenly Mountain Hall. To think that there was a secret realm in their territory that even second refinement cultivators would flock to. Yet, the Heavenly Mountain Hall did not know about it. It was as if they were sitting on a treasure mountain without knowing it. Of course, even if the Heavenly Mountain Palace knew about the existence of the mystic realm, they wouldn't be able to gain anything from it. After all, the most powerful person in the Heavenly Mountain Palace was only at the pinnacle of the saint realm. At best, he was at the level of a bright moon sword saint. The 6 of them were all peerless experts with extraordinary means. They easily avoided the patrolling disciples of the Heavenly Mountain Palace and entered the Heavenly Mountain. There was a hidden cave there. After several turns, Kong Lu and the others stopped. In front of them was an uneven black stone wall. It didn't seem to be anything unusual. The entrance to the secret realm is here. Kong Lu pointed ahead and said. Immediately, he formed seals with both hands. Waves of space power appeared and turned into transparent handprints that flew out and landed on the black stone wall in front of them. Under the hundreds of handprints, Kong Lu's expression was solemn. There was sweat on his forehead. It was obvious that he had used up a lot of energy. The stone wall began to change. It was as if there was a layer of invisible power that started from the center and slowly spread out in all directions. Back then, I did my best to leave a space seal on this stone wall in order to protect it. Even if someone accidentally enters here, they won't find out. After Kong Lu withdrew his hand, he explained, "Of course, if someone's attainment in sealing is higher than mine, it will be difficult to protect it." This possibility was almost impossible. When Kong Lu laid down the seal, he was only at the early stage of the second refinement and had used all his strength to lay it down. The Tianshan domain was just a small, remote domain with thin heaven-earth yuan qi. Very few experts would come here. Even if there were, they were mostly just passing by. As the airflow was unsealed, everyone began to sense the extraordinariness of the stone wall. A faintly discernible fluctuation of aura was constantly being emitted. It was extremely obscure. "Wait until I recover my strength, then I'll lay down another layer of seal to prevent others from disturbing us," said Kong Lu. He was very cautious. No one had any objections. Although Chu Mu was also proficient in the path of sealing, it had been a very long time since he had cultivated it. Thus, his attainments in the path of sealing were far inferior to Kong Lu's. When Kong Lu set up the seals, Chu Mu was also carefully watching and taking the opportunity to comprehend some things from them. After everything was done, everyone turned around and faced the black stone wall. "Let's go." Kong Lu had entered the secret realm before. He had experience, so he took the lead. Taking a step forward, Kong Lu's body disappeared into the pitch-black stone wall as if he had entered water. Everyone quickly followed him. The scene before them changed. Traces of coldness invaded their bodies, making them feel a little cold. A breath ago, they were still in front of the black stone wall. In the next breath, they were in a white world. The white snow seemed to be boundless as far as the eye could see. It was so cold that everyone felt a trace of coldness. One had to know that they were all peerless experts. Even if Chu Mu wasn't one, he still had the strength of a peerless expert. Cold and heat couldn't invade him. From this, one could see how shocking the coldness of this place was. "This place is definitely very suitable for cultivators of ice attribute cultivation techniques," said Lei Ba with a smile. Some special cultivation techniques often required special environments to be cultivated to Deshang's level or even to the Great Circle. Of course, even if it was a relatively ordinary cultivation technique, one could still obtain great benefits in a suitable environment. Perhaps the owner of this secret realm cultivated a special and powerful ice attribute cultivation technique, which caused the secret realm to be in this state, said Feng Wuhan. A special environment could create a powerful cultivation technique, and a special cultivation technique could also create a special environment. The two were actually interconnected. None of us are ice attribute cultivators. Such an environment is not only not beneficial to us, it will even hinder our exploration of the secret realm, said Kong Lu. This is only the periphery of the secret realm. The deeper we go into the secret realm, the colder it will be. In the end, it will even affect our strength. Hearing Kong Lu's words, everyone couldn't help but be shocked. Now, they only felt a slight chill, but they didn't take it to heart. This was because even if the chill was 10 times heavier, it wouldn't affect their strength. However, from what Kong Lu said, the chill behind them was heavy enough to affect their strength. What kind of chill was this? Even the most powerful saint-level cultivator would be frozen in an instant when faced with such a chill, extinguishing all vitality. Of course, Chu Mu was an exception. He was an exception, so no one could equate him with saint-level cultivators. More than 10 years ago, I was still at the beginner stage of second refining. It was precisely because I entered this secret realm that I obtained some treasures in the periphery that my strength rose from the beginner stage of second refining to the intermediate stage of second refining in just over 10 years. This speed of improvement is beyond my expectations, said Kong Lu. Immediately, as if he had thought of something, he glanced at Chu Mu and said, "Special circumstances don't count." Everyone let out good-natured laughter. Compared to Chu Mu, they were simply looking for trouble. However, the growth of a monstrous genius who possessed great fortune and incomparably shocking talent could not be viewed with common sense. Chu Mu didn't say anything. He just pretended to smile bitterly and was very cooperative. Well, time waits for no one. Let's go deeper into the secret realm as soon as possible, said Kong Lu. This was because more than 10 years ago, although he had obtained benefits in the periphery of the secret realm, it had taken him more than 10 years to rise from the beginner stage of second refining to the intermediate stage of second refining. If he wanted to be faster, he naturally had to go deeper into the secret realm and obtain better treasures. The 6 of them all had the strength of peerless experts. They quickly moved forward. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard. In the distance there was an astonishing chill gathering, and the fluctuations were strong. It's the Ice Demon Man, Kong Lu said. The Ice Devil Man is a special existence in the periphery of the secret realm, just like the guards of the secret realm. It has the strength of a peerless expert and its cold aura is astonishing. There may be ice chalcedony in its body. After taking it, it can further refine its strength and slowly improve its strength. Back then, I obtained enough frigid jade essence and refined it to improve my strength. In the end, Kong Lu added, these frost demons don't have any weaknesses. Only by smashing their bodies with great power can they be killed. Otherwise, they will absorb the coldness of the secret realm to replenish themselves. As Kong Lu spoke, figures appeared in the distance. Each figure was about 2 meters tall. They had a head, 2 arms, a torso, and 2 legs. They looked like humans, but their bodies were pale ice blue. There were also countless deep ice blue dots on their bodies, exuding an incomparably astonishing chill. The eyes of the Ice Demon Man were deep ice blue. They were cold and ruthless, with a hint of brutality. Seeing Chu Mu and the other 5, the group of Ice Demon Man suddenly let out an astonishing roar and rushed over.